to the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And
an examination of government's own economic data for the first quarter of this year reveals a very troubling exacerbation of these fiscal rigidities. Instead of taking the bull by the horn and addressing the root causes of the economic meltdown, government opted to place their hopes in misguided revenue projections and regressive tax measures such as the infamous E-levy. The E-levy was presented as the panacea of the economic problems of Ghana. Indeed, it was said that it will solve everything. It will do our roads, build our hospitals, give fertilizer to farmers. The E-levy was like the magic wand. We are in fact told that if we pass E-levy, it will help government to reduce borrowing. True to our predictions and our cautions to government about the overly ambitious revenue and fiscal projections, available first quarter data shows that those targets will not be met. And this, no doubt, will create even bigger credibility crisis for our battered economy. For the entire month of May, figures available to me of the much vaunted E-levy, which was rammed down the throats of Ghanaians, yielded a paltry 54 million Ghana cedis, against a target of 474 million for that month, representing only 11.3%. And so the unofficial Prime Minister was right when he said they are making just about 10% of what they expected. The month of June has not offered any sign of improvement, as only about 7.1 million had been collected by the first week of the month. By the first week of June, only 7.1 million had come in. These figures demonstrate that so far the E-levy has been a spectacular failure and has become the mother of all nuisance taxes. And as you know, a recent survey showed that 80% of Ghanaians who use mobile money have adapted their behavior to avoid the tax. More people are cashing out from their wallets to make cash payments instead of transferring wallet to wallet where the tax is imposed. We've therefore retrogressed in our bid to make Ghana the cashless society that we have all been hoping for.
These guys are going to IMF at a time they basically don't have anything, no blueprint. So chances are that we are going to have a lot of the program being designed from the perspective of the IMF and not the perspective of the country. But I want to make the point that they have already started on a faulty leg. Asking Ken Ofori-Atta to engage IMF is equivalent to telling the IMF we don't want a program. One, Ken Ofori-Atta lacks the capacity and is not fit for this type of purpose. Ken Ofori-Atta should be fired immediately with that communique in order to give assurance and comfort to the negotiating parties that Ghana is serious at having a program. Charles Edoubuahi should follow in tow. The Ministry of Finance at this moment in time need a complete upgrade from the people who are currently sitting there in order that we have credible leadership to engage the IMF and come up with a program that is a workable program. Unfortunately, he is the same man who the president has directed to engage the IMF. To go and say what? That we are no more a sovereign country? That we are no more a proud nation? That the people who said they should go to IMF are now not naysayers, but he's now the naysayers because he has come? So the president is playing games. He seems not to understand the doldrums from which they've brought the economy. I would wish that the government show clear commitment that it is ready to have an IMF program that will be to the benefit of the people of Ghana and that we are putting our best foot forward. The man they've asked to go and negotiate with IMF should not be nearer any process of negotiation. He and Charles Edoubuahi are the reasons why we are where we are. And the president will give himself a chance at having a program that is acceptable to all stakeholders. If Ken Oforiatta and Charles Edubuahe are announced as not being ministers by midnight today. In the absence of that, we are still playing gimmicks and we are still playing games with the emotions of Ghanaians.
One of the rationales given for seeking the loan is the need for foreign exchange to shore up our reserves, which have dwindled considerably in the last few months. This government knows that the wisest thing to do in these circumstances is to improve our reserve position, and that is to seek balance of payment support from multilateral institutions like the IMF. Because this balance of payment support will come at concessionary rates and at very minimal cost that are certainly nowhere near the astronomical and prohibitive cost that, that is associated with this syndicated 1 billion loan. We wish to serve notice going forward that the NDC in Parliament will not support any further non-concessionary borrowing or loans that are not project-specific with clear and unambiguous terms of the benefit to our nation. We will not partake in the destruction of the Ghanaian economy, which this government appears so bent on doing. Perhaps the knowledge by President Akufo-Addo and his head of the economic management team and his finance minister that they will not be in government in the very near future to carry this debt burden has emboldened them to act so irresponsibly by borrowing this much under such exorbitant terms and conditions. It is also entirely possible that this unbridled borrowing binge is partly motivated by the fact that the personal fortunes of the finance minister and other regime actors have been significantly enhanced with the tens of millions of Ghanaian cedis that have accrued in their private firms as transaction advisory fees for all the bond issuances. Whatever the case may be, this appetite for borrowing has proven catastrophic for our economy and has done real damage. It is evident, therefore, that the solution to the problem lies with taking the bold steps to restructure our debt, to get some relief from pumping far too much revenue into debt servicing on an annual basis and channeling the savings into priority areas that will benefit our people directly. The Akufo-Addo administration knows this too well, but political posturing, empty grandstanding, and a morbid fear of their own pedestrian politicking around less serious problems of the recent past have immobilized and frozen them into action. Inaction which continues to run our economy aground and worsening the living conditions of our people by the day. And with this, I'm referring to their criticism of my administration when we decided to go to the IMF. They said it's only lazy governments that go to the IMF. And I mean, the words they said in that past have come to haunt them. So one of the reasons why they're afraid to go to the IMF is that what they said in the past will follow them.
But as you can see today, the Ghanaian people are fearless. They are not cowards. The Ghanaian people cannot be suppressed. They cannot be intimidated. Go through our history, right from slavery, right from colonialism, right from military juntas. We have always, as a people, been unsuppressive. We cannot be intimidated. We cannot be harassed, and we cannot be cowed. And that is why you can see the turnout today. And all of us, I have decided to leave Parliament and be here this morning to offer my solidarity and to send a clear message that nobody in this country will be intimidated. Nobody in this country will be cowed. Now, you must put all of what is going on in context. We are currently being governed by a president who was allowed to demonstrate, not once, not twice. Indeed, his rise to fame is that he led very large demonstrations, the Comifreco demonstration, which even as president, he commemorated. He called his friends, his colleagues, and had an anniversary of the Kumipreko demonstration. And this happened under the era of President Rawlings, who has
labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and
a very good morning to you, wherever you are joining us from. It's Pan-African Television, and we are live. It's the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. Here we say it is as it is, no matter who is involved. In the end, we'll be better educated. We're also live on our social media platform. We are live on Facebook. The page to look for is Pan-African Television. If you are going to YouTube, it's Pan-African TV. You can get to watch us there. Our Facebook section has a comment section. I read majority of the comments there. If you post a comment there, I will go through them as we go along in the show. My name is Senna Nomo. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's edition of the show. I hope you had a good week. Well, the major discussion is now the matter of the International Monetary Fund. A directive from the President to the Finance Minister that he should start discussions with the IMF, leading to us heading there for some level of support. There's an admission that the situation is not good in terms of the economy. The E-levy was supposed to help. It is not helping. So now we are heading to the IMF. And then we'll take you to the demonstration that was supposed to draw the government's attention to the situation of the economy. Rising prices, inflation out of the roof, fuel prices, unending increases, among several other things that they were drawing government's attention to. One of the requests they made was to repeal the act that brought the E-levy into effect. Now that we are going to the IMF and have decided that the E-levy is no longer the solution, what do we do? The demonstration, the first day of the demonstration, it didn't go as planned. The demonstrators wanted to use the ring road. The police said no and started firing tear gas into them. It led to a standoff. The second day was quite better, very peaceful. They marched even in front of the Jubilee House. We'll be talking about that issue. And then we'll end with the contributions that are coming in from the Christian community. We are told that they are supposed to bring majority of the money to pay for the National Cathedral. So far, Ghana has spent in excess of 200 million Ghana cedis on the project. That's public money. That's where money is not supposed to come from. But we are now hearing that the Christian community has contributed 2.21 million cedis to the cathedral so far. We'll end with that particular issue. Thank you very much for joining us. We'd like to hear your views on these issues. Joining me for this discussion this morning, Mr. Kwesi Prajimia, who is seated, General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. Seated beside him is Jifa Tega, who joins us. Good morning. No, we are getting closer to me. Our friend Protocol joins us from a New Patriotic Party. Wonderful to see you this morning.
Yes, good morning, Senna.
Yeah. Mr. Bernard Mona will be sitting very soon, and then we'll start off the show with a discussion on the IMF. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll start off the discussion. Is the IMF that we are headed to? The suggestion is that not so straightforward. Just because the president has directed the finance minister to have conversations with the IMF doesn't mean that the IMF will welcome us with both hands. They will have conditions, and it's a process, a long, drawn-out process. The last time we went there, it took 6 months. And at that time, the conditions were not this bad. Zimbabwe has been searching for a program for 5 years. Sri Lanka, they are still fighting for it. So would we get one? We'll be discussing that shortly. Stick and stay.
he has labored, he has
Trasacco Estates, home to Accra's most beautiful and luxurious homes, presents its newest addition, Trasacco Springs, a premium master planned community of service plots surrounded by an exhaustive list of amenities. The gated community of Tema to Accra Motorway presents you the finest opportunity to own a land that suits your preferred size, budget, and payment terms. Trasaco Springs is open to you for development. Our on-site sales executives are ready. Call on 055 659 2658.
Hello, what are you doing Tuesday to Friday, 7:30 to 9 o'clock p.m. every day? You should be watching The Couch. I'll tell you why. On Tuesdays, we talk social issues, lifestyle, health, all those everyday issues that affect us in the big ways. Late Wednesdays are for book reviews. Thursdays are for the hard talk, those socio-economic, policy-oriented, political questions that demand for the tough questions to be asked. And Personality Profiling Fridays, when we get to know the stories behind the winning personalities we love. Inspirational story from inspirational personalities. Hey, listen, you really cannot miss The Couch with me, Amma Pratt. Still, the only TV show with a hat.
Suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer and
Welcome back from that break. If you just joined us, Mother of All Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, live on Pan-African TV, live on Radio Gold, and also live on several affiliate radio stations across the country. Very important, we are live in Greater Accra to on Ahunto 92.3 FM. I'll be going to some of the affiliate stations we are live on as we go along in the program. But let's start the discussion with the directive to the Finance Minister. Head to the IMF. Is it the solution? Mr. Mona, nice to see you.
Good to see you, Senior.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Bernard Mona will start for us.
First, good morning to Uncle Kwesi, Jefa, and then Idrisu Protocol. And to the many viewers and probably listeners across the globe. First and foremost, yesterday was 1st July, a significant date in our independence struggle. 1st of July probably culminated the many stages that led to our attainment of independence. It imposed on us the republican status that we continue to enjoy up to today. Somehow, President Akufo-Addo decided that 1st July is not a significant event in the calendar of activities towards our independence, and therefore has decided to make it a commemorative day. 1st July as a commemorative day, no statement whatsoever from government quarters came out as to even talk about the significance of that day in the struggle for our liberations. Don't forget that between 1957 to 1960, the Queen was still the head of government in the Ghana that we obtained. It was not until 1st July 1960 that Ghana successfully yanked itself from the yoke of the British. And so 1st July can qualify as the proper and true independence of a liberated African state. On that day, Kwame Nkrumah became president. Previously, he was prime minister. Moving forward, one would have thought that 1st July, given that it is our Independence Day, cannot be the day that our president will be issuing directives towards us committing ourselves to one of the neo-colonialist institutions, the IMF and the World Bank. Somehow, the background and perfidy of President Akufo-Addo led us all into a significant day like Ghana's true Independence Day, that we should go and resubmit ourselves to the International Monetary Fund. I have, and consistently so, said that the IMF has never been a panacea to the many crises in the world. Indeed, if you know where the United States is, the World Bank and the IMF are almost like twin brothers, opposite each other. When the United States of America is having its economic crisis, whether it is a meltdown, whether it is financial crisis, the United States does not go to the IMF or the World Bank to go and borrow, yet they are situated in New York, in the United States of America. So it means that there is something fundamentally wrong with these institutions. That is why the United States, for instance, where it is located, will not go to the IMF to go and seek any bailout for its collapsing economy. So they have various means to stimulate the economy to grow. And it is important that as developing countries, we should continue to learn this. When things became dire, and everyone was talking about the economic mess that our presidential policies have led us into, and that the Minister for Finance appears to not be on top of the issues, President Akufo-Addo will not listen. He kept heaping praises on the financial brilliance of Ken Ofori-Atta. It turned out that, after all, the financial ignorance of Ken Ofori-Atta will lead us into this deep hitch. No more brilliance. Today, here we find ourselves, under normal circumstances, when everything started going amok, one would have expected that the best thing to do is to remove a finance minister who has shown so much incompetence, so much incapacity, and gross abuse of his office. You show him the exit. You continue to maintain him on the basis that he is your brother. Your brother is leading everybody and leading the economy astray. And that is where we are. Why are we here? We are here predominantly maybe on 5 factors. One, that on assumption of office, it was a presidential policy to collapse financial institutions. So you collapsed nearly 10 banks that were in operation in this country. You collapsed over 400 microfinance institutions. And you, of course, the other savings and loans institutions, you deliberately collapsed them. In collapsing them, don't think that it is only the financial institutions you collapse, because industries were operating with these institutions. In effect, you collapsed those industries as well. And so you brought in the wake a huge chunk of unemployment. And recently, you see that we are going to pay much more to the workers of the Defunct Capital Bank, UT Bank, and others who had gone to court. They were supposed to be absorbed by Ghana Commercial Bank by the directive that our ignorant finance minister had put across, that they were going to be absorbed. Commercial Bank did not absorb them. They laid them off. The courts have instructed that all these people should be paid, and they should be re-engaged in their work. So for the period that they have not worked, the government is going to spend money. So your recklessness, financial policy recklessness, led to the collapse of all these banks. And I keep insisting, assuming that each of these institutions were to be employing, say, 100 people, and you collapse about 517 of them, multiply by just 100, and see the amount of people you have laid off onto the streets. Now you come to those who were putting their monies there, industries and what have you, who eventually have to also probably go bankrupt. That had a toll on the economy. You, in the end, spend so much money trying to collapse the banks. And if you had spent such amount of money trying to resuscitate these financial institutions, to retool them, they would have become probably buoyant and be paying government your obligation. You left it. And you were busy trying to collapse. And in some instances, the argument you put up for collapsing some of the banks is unthinkable. For instance, Heritage Bank. They had met all their capital requirements. They had met all the requirements that the, what do we call it, Bank of Ghana had required them. You said that they were in court over some issues. That is the basis for which you collapse Capital Bank. Is the government of Ghana not in court on many issues? Have individuals...
Heritage Bank.
Yes, that is Heritage Bank. Yeah. You understand? Yeah, you said that they are in the court because of Cocoa Board, and that they supply some fertilizer and what have you. It turned out that is the major argument for which you collapsed a bank. The bank had met all the requirements that you have asked them to put across. Today, they are still in court. Government of Ghana has been taken to court on many issues. Have we collapsed the Ghana government? So you look at these reasons and you know that, look, they are coming from a midget economic mind who thinks that we must do everything to collapse and to frustrate other institutions that probably will be in competition with ours. So you succeeded in doing that. All the industries have gone. People who have put their monies there, they have all suffered some damage. The second other aspect is the free-for-all borrowing. I call it, you go and buy loans. You are buying loans for almost 20%. All the time. After you collapse these financial institutions, after you told the world that you were launching what we call Ghana Beyond Aid, you went into the capital market. Small time or any time you go and borrow, sell your debts and then take money at outrageously high interest rates. So we kept borrowing and kept borrowing and kept borrowing, increasing our debt stock and making the country a laughable stock. Today we have piled so much debt and we have very little to show for the debts that we have. The worst is that when you go and take these loans, what do you come and use them for? What do you come and use them for? So we take so much money, and all that we have to talk about is that we have been able to digitize. We have been able to do this. So everything we talk about is that we put numbers on our housing across the country, that we put Ghana Post GPS so that you'll be able to track somebody's location. Those are the things that in our mind you borrowed money to go and spend on. So when you spend on that, what did it bring in return? The third aspect is that you kept on printing money. And you took away the money that belongs to the poor. In the system now, you cannot find 1 cedi notes. In the system now, you cannot find 2 cedi notes. And the 2 cedi notes, we can understand why. Because President Akufo-Addo doesn't want to see Kwame Nkrumah. And since the 2 cedi was deliberately created by Atta Mills to have the sole face of Kwame Nkrumah, it has to also be redrawn. So if you go to the banks today and you are seeking 1 cedi, 2 cedis, you will not get. They are no more in circulation. If you doubt me, go and try it. So we redrew those monies. And yet we printed more 50 cedis Ghana notes. We increased it to 100 cedis Ghana notes. We have increased it to 200 cedis Ghana notes. When you are printing more money without anything to do with the money, what happens? At the same time that you are doing this, you decided that, look, Ghanaians who were engaged artisanal mining, you decided one day that you were imposing, what do we call it, a freeze on what you describe as galamsey. You chased everybody out of their workplaces, operational places. So what did you put across? You put across unemployment. In some instances, you even burnt their equipment. And when you burnt their equipment, they went to court. The court said you should pay, so you paid judgment for your recklessness in managing the economy. And we all have to sit down and watch you to do so. We sat down and watched you to do all that. Above all, our president appears not to have learned any lesson from all these things that are going on. The frugal spending, extravagant lifestyle of President Akufo-Addo and his ministers is not anything you can describe. Whilst the economy is in this mess, the president is busy flying in rented jets that cost the taxpayer so much money. When you are in economic crisis and you yourself admit that there is difficulty, first is to tighten your own belt before you urge other people to tighten their belts. In the face of all this, you said you were bringing about an electronic transfer levy. We told you about the ramifications, one, on the savings of people. That in most rural communities, because you have even collapsed the microfinance institutions, savings and loan institutions, and what have you, many people can no more access financial institutions to put their money. So when they go and sell their wares, and they don't want to carry fiscal cash, they move to the nearest mobile vendor and say, put my money in my wallet. They start to save in there. when they are to spend their own savings, you take part of that money. That is confiscation of people's money. It's not a tax. When young people have to go and do business, they want to start their businesses with their capital, because they want to use electronic transfers, you go and take part of the money. We warned you that that is not the way to promote a healthy business environment. You will not listen because you call Ken Oforiatta a brilliant man, who doesn't understand that taking money out of people's savings is confiscation of their savings. It is a depletion of their capital. We talked and talked and talked. We went on the streets, we picketed, we demonstrated. We told you that if you insist and you impose it on us, we will not pay. You doubted the resolve of the people of Ghana, that we will not pay. Because nobody is willing for your savings to be taken away. Nobody is willing for your capital to be eroded by a government that does not know its left from right. You went ahead to impose it. As we sit today, you yourself somersaulted and said that many people are not paying as you expected, and that less than 10% has been received of the amount of money that you are expecting after the contribution. And it's even going to go down further. Because many people like me, I didn't know that some of the transactions I was doing on the bank using my mobile bank app, I was paying until recently when I went to check my statement and noticed that I was paying. And because of that, many people are not going to use the apps again to do transfers. We will use checkbooks, which are not taxable by that formula. So you see, you are going to have still, because the people promised you that they will not pay. And you defied them and forced yourself into parliament and celebrated. You did E-levy cakes and what have you. You celebrated it. So you see, if you are a government and you don't want to be responsive to the people, this is where you land yourself. Now I am told that once they said that it is either E-levy or IMF, we have done the E-levy. After E-levy, you are still going to the IMF. You said that you will not go to IMF. And I said that, look, once I disapprove of going to IMF, because starting from Bolivia to Uganda, to Ghana, to Zambia, IMF prescriptions have never solved any country's problems. In fact, they exacerbate the problems. Was it not this IMF that instructed us to do structural adjustment programs? When we finished the structural adjustment programs and they knew that its consequences were going to be high, they brought in PAMSCAT that is supposed to mitigate the consequences of the adjustments to our society. When we finished, then they said, oh, our economy was getting stable. They touted Ghana as a darling boy of the IMF. In no time, we were told that our country had gone from bad to worse, and we had to join HIPIC. And we declared ourselves a HIPIC, highly indebted poor country. The IMF led us onto that golden path of being crowned the inglorious title of an highly indebted. In fact, they even got to a point where they said enhanced highly indebted poor country. So it's clear that the IMF prescriptions has never solved your problems. What they will come and tell you is that, okay, you own a house and you are poor, so sell the house and go and rent so that you can have money. But the rent will expire. And so our state institutions, we were asked to sell them off. State assets, we were asked to sell them off. And we cancel so many things. They will tell you first, they will tell you that they are doing downsizing. That means that you should cut down the number of people that you have to employ. And if you cut down the number of people that you have to employ, what are they going to eat? What is the consequences of unemployment in society? You should start to count that. But they will tell you to cut down the number of people that you have to employ. And they use catchy phrases like downsizing, lay off, and what have you. So you have to do that. And so today, we are in this ditch. When we said that don't go, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, you insisted above everybody and went there. Did all the things that you have to do. You land yourself in a mess. Then you come and say that, no, you will not go to IMF. As if it is criminal to go to the IMF. That is the impression you created. That it is criminal to go to the IMF. Yet Ghana is a member of the IMF and we have been contributing to the IMF. Today, President Akufo-Addo, on our True Independence Day, said that we should go and resubmit ourselves to the international financial institutions. As to whether the IMF at this stage, after you have bastardized them, will even accept to come. Indeed, it was Septepe, and I think that we have to give credit to Septepe. Septepe told us somewhere in March that the IMF team had come to Ghana. And he was suspicious that the government was working towards going to IMF. They attacked Septepe, that they will not go to the IMF. Because of that, we did all manner of jamborees. We went round, did town hall meetings to say that do E-levy so that we will be financially independent. Today, E-levy done. You have collapsed banks. You have collapsed mining institutions. You have laid off so many workers. You have made industries to collapse. Now when you turn around, you blame it on Russia invasion of Ukraine. You blame it on COVID-19. Yet across the globe, Ghana is the most country that has received so much money as far as COVID-19 is concerned. The net effect is that we spend less than we received. So Ghana cannot be the country complaining about the ravaging effects of COVID-19 on our economy. Number two, as for Russia and Ukraine, when did they start? When did Russia and Ukraine start, that it will be the basis for which our economy will run this low, for us to be running to the IMF. The signs were on the wall. They refused to listen. Today, reality has done us. I am not a supporter of the IMF, because take country by country, take policy by policy, the IMF has not been able to redeem any country beyond sinking the country's fortunes lower than it was before. So I don't know where we stand now. But I think that Akufo-Addo and his government will go down as the worst ever that this nation has ever produced.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Comrade Bernard Mona is a leading member of Arise Ghana. They organized a demonstration on Tuesday and Wednesday that demonstration happened. We'll come to that issue, but we are still talking about the matter of the IMF. Well, in case you haven't seen a statement from the presidency, this was issued by the Ministry of Information, who says the President of the Republic, Nana Danko Akufo-Addo, has authorized Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to commence formal engagements with the International Monetary Fund, inviting the fund to support an economic program put together by the government of Ghana. So they have an economic program, and you're asking the fund to support it. That's according to the statement. The statement continues. This follows a telephone conversation between the President and the IMF. IMF Managing Director, Ms. Kristalina Georgieva, conveying Ghana's decision to engage with the fund. At the meeting on June 30th, 2022, Cabinet indicated its support for the decision. The engagement with the IMF will seek to provide balance of payment support as part of a broader effort to quicken Ghana's build back in the face of challenges induced by the COVID-19 pandemic and recently the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So we are back to Russia-Ukraine crisis. That's signed by Kojo Ponkrumah, who is Minister for Information. Protocol.
Chairman Mona, let me also extend courtesies to my uncle Kusi Pratt and of course Jifa. Of course, this is a very important topic for us to digest. As a matter of fact, as a country and given the circumstances that we are, there is a reality that has actually been done on us as a country. And of course, as someone communicating for the government, or if you like, the party, we need to really appreciate the very concerns of the good people of Ghana. We have come to accept that indeed times are hard. And for that matter, the government need to fashion out certain ideas, or if you like, come out with certain solutions that could possibly propel the economy to move within a particular trajectory of positive. So on the basis of that, I would want to encourage every well-meaning Ghanaian, and of course, you know, people who sought to communicate for the party, I'm referring to the NPP, should be magnanimous enough to be able to let the Ghanaian people know the real issues that are happening in the country. I would want to set some kind of a premise and answer them in the affirmative. It goes like this. Are we really having an economic issue at hand? The answer is yes. Did we touted that as a party we had the best managers of the economy? The answer is yes. What is it that is going on that has actually seen a drawback within the economy of Ghana? The answers are immediate, and everybody, every well-meaning person who actually monitors the economic regime in terms of the domestic and that of the global economy would testify to the fact that what we are seeing today has actually been a very serious and a dire consequences for not even Ghana but the entire globe. So for me, these are the critical issues that we must try to look at. Now, let us go backwards to look at the time that the NPP government came to power. And I'm referring to the leadership of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. We inherited an economy that was limping. And given the fact that we sold to the good people of Ghana the ideas that this was what we were coming to do, at the end of the day, the government of Ghana was able, and even as today, to fashion out and, if you like, make meaning out of all those things that we actually, sold to the good people of Ghana. For example, when we took over, in terms of the GDP projections at that time, it was hovering around 3.2%. Going forward, somewhere 2020, that was when this pandemic came. The economy was growing at an average of 7.1%. That should tell you that the NPP government was doing its best to be able to turn things around. But unfortunately, COVID came, and that actually drew back all the gains that we have made. But even within that particular COVID period, what was the measures that the NPP government did? So it means that we would have to measure the government in terms of what it promises to the good people of Ghana. From the inception of the government of the NPP up to this particular period that we are, the government has been very bold enough to embrace a particular policy that would ensure that the good people of Ghana benefit. Now, a classical example is the free senior high school. Of course, the NDC in one hand, at the time that, the government, or if you like, when NPP was in opposition and was talking about the free SHS and all that, NDC didn't see any wisdom in that. And we insisted that we are coming to ensure that free senior high school would manifest, and every person who is, from junior high school to going into secondary school would have their education for free. Of course, it would have some kind of economic consequences for the country. But you would ask yourself, what is it that you are coming into government to do? Is to solve, or if you like, mitigate some of the suffering of the people. At the end of the day, that is what governance is all about. So, with the intervention of the free senior high school policy, of course, I should admit that there are still teething challenges within the free senior high school implementation as we speak. I would not gloss over this. But the truth of the matter is that the free senior high school as a policy has come to stay For me, that is a very important intervention that the NPP government has done. So if you are to look at the consequences, because I told you that it has some economic ramifications for the country. So that one, you put it aside. What other policy intervention did the government of Ghana did to be able to ensure that we had, at that time, we are able to, as it were, ensure that we have what we call agricultural productivity? That gave birth to this particular idea of industrialization, one district, one factory, and all that. Huge chunk of the national resources was actually thrown at that particular policy to see its manifestation. All these things also would definitely have economic impact on on the country. You cannot run away from that fact. Now, another important thing that the government of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo did was to look at the ever-rising youth, or if you like, graduate unemployment situation that the country were greeted with, owing from the fact that when the NDC was in power, of course, it actually gave birth to what is now known as graduate unemployment that that the government of the NPP were saddled with. So the government, in trying to solve that problem, created series of interventions. Prominent among them include the Nation Builders Corps program. That ensured that, and people even, I get surprised when people say that NAPCO has disappointed. The truth of the matter is that NAPCO had a particular transition to be able to, at the end of the period, to transition the beneficiaries into what? For them to be able to develop, or if you like, develop their entrepreneurial skills through the help of the youth start. That has actually been that has actually been within the drawing board of the NPP government. All these things has an economic implications for the country. I am not saying that, and let no one thinks that I'm defending the indefensible. But the truth of the matter is that, like I said, there is a very huge issue that we are grappling with, as we have it today. Yes, and that problem cuts across every country every country within the globe. The issue is that when you also look at the Russian-Ukraine war, it definitely has a toll on the economy. So for me, it is about time that we rally behind each other to be able to ensure that all these particular problems, we are able to fix it, rather than trying to make mockery of people and more or less trying to, if you like, bring out tantrums and make people feel like they are not in charge, or they are not competent enough to handle this. Competency for me is to be able to foresee and look at, or if you like, come out with certain measures that you would be able to adopt such that you are able to correct certain problems within your economy. Now, the general refrain is that the IMF is not a good environment that actually propels the economic growth of African countries that goes there to, as it were, seek any financial bailout. But you see, at the time that the NDC actually wanted to go into this particular IMF program, if you look at the narrative at that time, you would ask yourself, and juxtaposing that particular narrative to what is currently happening, that that the New Patriotic Party is faced with. Look at look at the issues that culminated or that resulted in the NDC's decision to go to the IMF. What were the prevailing economic conditions at that particular time? Juxtapose that to what is happening in in the global world today. Did we have any pandemic at that time? That is why His Excellency the Vice President was talking about the fact that you cannot borrow your way throughout to be able to solve the hydra-headed problems that confront you as a country. Because at that time, there wasn't any peculiar, world economic problem that everybody was facing at that time. So we could not have contemplated going to the IMF. So when NDC went to the IMF, what was the ramifications? Job freeze and all that. That saw us, into about 3 or 4 years. For me, that was not a very good, or if you like, a very nice calculated attempt. I would want to benefit from my Uncle Kusi Pratt in his description of the IMF. He would say that to what extent must we continue to, as it were, be with this particular neoliberal dance with the devil? I'm quoting, I'm paraphrasing him in one way, because I've been monitoring some of his analysis about IMF and other related matters. So for him, he sees that we cannot continue to be with this particular neoliberal dance with the devil, which he described the IMF as being devil. For me, you may have to look at what are the conditionalities that are likely to be attached, and whether or not the NPP as a government, looking at our growth, or if you like, what we envisage to be able to, ensure that we are able to win ourselves out of this particular economic quagmire. Will that particular conditionalities, obviously there would be conditionalities. The government of today would have to measure those conditionalities against its own homegrown policies that it is actually carrying out. If it is not feasible, of course, there should be some kind of negotiation in one way or the other to ensure that the government actually sustains certain programs that benefit the average Ghanaian. That, for me, should be the case. Now, there is a book that I used to read, and of course, I must credit Bernard Mona for this particular one. He pointed to me a particular book titled "Kicking Against the Ladder" by one Chinese professor, Shan, Dr. Shan. Now, if you read that particular literature, you would come to appreciate the fact that development at the time, the West, and how they actually developed during the 1918 and all, during the 1980s, right away to 1950, 1970, thereabout. They adopted certain policies that, if you reflect today, what African countries, or if you like, developing countries, are actually adopting. But the truth of the matter is that though their prescriptions at that time was such that they were able to ensure what is called protectionism, by ensuring that within their domestic economies, they were able to deliberately, if you like, sponsor individuals within the country to be able to ensure that they have a very well-grown economic policies within their countries. That is how come they actually got developed. But the truth of the matter is that the IMF has become a double-edged sword, in the sense that some of their prescriptions indeed has not actually benefited, countries that goes there to borrow. But to what extent are we going to position ourselves as a government to ensure that, regardless of whatever conditionalities that they would bring out or they would give us, can we be brave enough to also, as it were, jettison some of those particular, if you like, propositions that they are going to give us, if indeed would not inure to the benefit of the development of Ghana? That, for me, should be the thinking, for our economic management team going into this particular kind of arrangement. Because at the end of the day, it is not them, because we are going to pay. The issue is that because we need to ensure that there is some kind of economic credibility, or if you like, policy credibility in one way or the other, to be able to win ourselves out of this particular problem. So for me, we need to be very cautious about going to the IMF, or if you like, the conditionalities that may be attached to it. If indeed it is not going to inure to the benefit of solving the problems of the actual economic problems that we are facing, then I would not encourage them. I would not encourage the government to swallow hook, line, and sinker any kind of policy. Any kind of conditionalities that they would want to to mete out. So all in all, yes, there are hardships in the economy today. And it is not the making of the government. It is not the fact that the government of the day have decided, to go into sleeping. That is how come this particular thing is happening. Because I mentioned to you the trajectory of the of the growth that we actually were able to see this particular country go. But unfortunately, the COVID and that of the Russia-Ukraine war have actually come to muddy the waters. So for me, these are the issues that we ought to be averting our minds to, rather than trying to score cheap political point. Now, Senna, there is this particular a newfound hope within the NDC fraternity, to the extent that yes, the MPP government has failed, and for that matter, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is the Messiah who is actually going to come to, as it were, solve the problems of Ghana. And I always ask myself, is it that, I mean, what haven't we know about the regime of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama? What new thing is he coming to add on board? This is a president who won the 2012 election and was actually trounced in the next election, and for that matter, a one-time president who actually was responsible for the economic mess that we saw at that time, to the extent that I think ISE and other bodies came out and actually talked about the kind of economic problems that the country was being faced with every now and then because of the doomsday crisis that we faced. To the extent that it was believed that the country loses in excess of $2 million United States dollars because of doomsday. So for me, leadership or governance is about alternatives. The NPP government has been magnanimous enough to accept the fact that yes, we would go into the IMF. But my plea should be that whatever conditionalities that they would bring, we need to reflect those conditionalities on the basis of what? The growth trajectory of this particular government and its policy. If some of the conditionalities goes contrary to our developmental paradigms, we need to negotiate further to be able to ensure that there is a win-win situation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Protocol. Salifu Idris Protocol is a member of the MPP's communication team. If you just joined us, you've missed the thoughts of Comrade Bernard Mona on the issue of us headed to the IMF to see if they can give us a program. But the last time, this government actually inherited an IMF program. Don't forget that. The program was the external credit facility, was what we went for. The IMF says in order to qualify for this, is that the facility is available to all PRGT, which is Poverty Reduction and Growth Trust, eligible member country that face a protracted balance of payment problem. Remember the statement I just read to you. It says that is when the resolution of the underlying macroeconomic imbalances will be expected to extend over the medium or longer term. So it's not today. Well, before I go to Jifar, let me read a few of your messages that you're sending to us through Facebook. Ayu Farouk is joining us and says, seriously, good morning. Okay, good morning to you all. Wonders shall never end. Those who touted themselves as gurus in government economic team to manage the economy are today running to IMF for bailout. Anto is also joining us. He says, ask my good from the MPP whether the MPP is seeking IMF bailout to stabilize the NAPCO and free SHS programs or what. This is to Americo Kusapanu, who says the MPP touted themselves to have the best brains of economic gurus to manage the economy, not knowing they were a bunch of hyenas of a hybrid Nyansa for economic management club. There's also Kobla Kobla says, Senator, please ask Protocol, how many countries got that much money like Ghana did? Now that they have gone to the IMF, all the rot they embarked on will be exposed. Good morning. Ibrahim Oshara says, but to defend the MPP when there is a mess, they will send, okay. Kwesi Asiedu Bwedi says, very difficult listening to the MPP guy.
over 5 years, you guys can't make your point without drawing in the NDC and JDM. Then what's the reason we voted for the MPP? There's also Holiness Mau Sinu Tonyonyo, who is watching us. This is just the beginning of the exposure of this arrogant and incompetent MPP government. God is watching them. Isaako Fakia, who says the MPP man should kindly compare Ghana's economy to Ivory Coast or that of Burkina in the midst of this Russian-Ukraine war. And all of us will understand that Ghana really needs a savior. There's Judy Mensah, who is joining us. Says, painful listening to this MPP communicator now. I feel sorry for them. Their leaders have betrayed them. Alassane Abdul Ganiu, please, I'm asking to know if the countries that Ghana is borrowing monies from are also running free SHS. Amaugan Kuda says, finally, Mahama is a hero, a prophet and a man of vision. As for Akufo-Addo Bawumia and his finance minister, Nana Kwame Osayasari says that the pandemic hits only Ghana. And why is it that only Ghana is heading to the IMF? Isaako again says, free senior high school was started by JM and Nana Jen. How dare you say NDC did not see anything good about that? Why are you propagandists? Okay. Why are you also always displaying ignorance? I think that's what you meant to write. Abdul Salam Rufai says, Sana, can you show us the projects on the screen for viewers to see? Information Ministry script that you're reading from. Okay. I hear you. Enoch Ajiman, finally, what is your point? It's like you are creating prison of your own creation and not getting a bailout. So there are several other messages that are coming in. I'll read some more as we go along. Jifa.
Sana, good morning. Good morning to my fellow panelists here today. It's, before I came here, I was reading so much on social media. Happy IMF Day. People are making so much fun, but in actual sense, it's not funny at all. Sana. Now, in 2017, when the NPP came to power, I quite remember this plan they had. I don't know whether to call it a plan or an adage or a motto. Ghana Beyond Aid. That is what they started with. It was big. Everyone knows. You don't need a prophet to tell you that we are a developing nation. We need so much help in so many ways. So how come we are suddenly beyond aid? Before you came to power at all, that is the NPP, you had made it known how terrible the conditions of the country were. So finally, how does it become Ghana Beyond Aid? That was a big picture. Well, those who still believed in the NPP by then were thinking, okay, this is a dream that will be achieved very soon, according to what the NPP said also. Senna, I'm trying to make this point because you realize that in this particular government, they make statements that you just don't understand. They make promises look so achievable. Certain big promises look so achievable. One of the current problems of the Nana-Addo government, the Nana-Addo Bawumia government, is because they overpromise and they grossly underdeliver. They will promise you a mountain and you will not even get a stone to stand on at the end of whatever it is that they've promised you. That is their problem. This whole IMF saga is because they, in their own words, and I can mention a lot of their leading members, John Kuma, Joe Kuma, Kennedy Japan, Ufuriata himself, and the president, and including Bawumia, have come out several times to state that the IMF is a no-go area, not an option. In fact, in the finance minister's words, he will tell you that we are a proud nation, and to IMF, we will never go there. When Bernard Mona was speaking, he said something. Who said IMF was an evil thing? We all know the consequences and that it's a bad thing, it's not the best, but who said it's an evil thing? But NPP made the entire country believe it's an evil thing. So today, all the backlash they are receiving is because of that. Now, let's just go a little through what we've had with them ever since 2017. Let's talk about the new taxes that they introduced, all to stabilize the economy. When they introduced COVID-19 levy, COVID-19 recovery levy, when they introduced COVID-19 recovery levy, because apparently we have to, tax the nation to make sure that we get something out of recovering, the system. That is it. Luxury tax vehicle levy. I don't know what their problem is in particular when it comes to luxury tax, but when it comes to luxury, anything luxury, I do not mind anyway, because I understand that we are taking not from the poor but from the rich. That is luxury tax vehicle. Financial sector stabilization levy. They were taking that too, amongst others. So when people, just like me, when I pay for fuel, when I pay at a restaurant, anything, I sit back and realize that, okay, in my hand here on my bill, I have taken so much, my bill has been taking so much off just to settle some of these taxes. And I'm paying for taxes that I don't know about. And these are all to shape up the economy.
Jifa, kindly hold on for me. We'll come back to Jifa shortly. Let's take a break so that we can fix Jifa's mic briefly. We'll be back soon.
He has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And
welcome back from that break. It's the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, live from the studios of Pan-African Television. We are live on television. We are also live on social media, Pan-African Television on Facebook, Pan-African TV on YouTube. We are also live on Radio Gold. Let's return to Jifa, who was sharing her thoughts on our route to IMF.
Oh, sure. So thank you very much, Senna. So before we went on a break, I was talking about how the MPP always comes up with something that we barely understand. And one of the things was the Ghana Beyond Aid. Their vision or whatever it is that they claim they have is so gigantic and their delivery is so low. Now, I was also talking about the taxes that we have been paying, the COVID tax, the fiscal stabilization levy to stabilize our fiscal system, and the luxury tax vehicle that we've been paying, and the cleanup, the banking cleanup sector. We also pay a levy for that. Now, that cleanup is what I would like to touch on a little bit. When we were there, and then several banks were collapsed, and we were told that the banking sector is being cleaned up. We didn't understand. No one understands till now because it doesn't make sense, that you are cleaning a sector and you are collapsing banks that is employing over hundreds of people in every branch. And looking at the fact that these are local institutions that are adding up so much, and this was a cleanup for them. Whatever it was, we're thinking that this is some magic that we don't know about. And so in a year or two, we will all see. And in fact, the finance minister, together with others, mentioned it and made it so clear that indeed we are cleaning up the sector. In a few years, you will see the outcome or the glorious outcome of that cleanup sector. And we actually pay taxes or levies to support that. Tena, this is where we are today. That we have done this and sacrificed this as a nation, and thinking that whatever be the case, we are sacrificing so much, or it will be a very painful process, but eventually we'll be able to get to the promised land that NPP has promised us. And it never worked. The cleanup sector, the taxes that we are paying from all angles never worked. But every day, in every communicator's words, NPP communicators' delivery, you hear them talking about how COVID has affected them so much that it has really disrupted everything they are supposed to do. Excuses upon excuses. That is the first part of the journey that we've been able to go through. Now, the second part of the entire journey is that basically we, as a country, acquiring all the loans that we've been able to benefit, not forgetting that before the NPP came to power, we just had a little over $120 billion in debt. Now we have over $350 billion. In a matter of just 6 years, I wouldn't even, let me just say 5, because we haven't really gone through anything like that this year. 5 years. Over $229 billion has been added to our public debt as a country. $229 billion. After all the taxes, the new nuisance taxes that I'd like to classify it as, that are being collected, $229 billion, that is more than what we've borrowed ever since Nkrumah's time, has been borrowed alone by this government. And there is absolutely nothing to show for it. We all know how much infrastructure takes up so much resources, especially finance. There is nothing this government has to show for this $229 billion. Senna, it's as simple as that. $229 billion, there is nothing that this government can show for it. The only thing they keep talking about is free SHS. Today, free SHS, that. Tomorrow, free SHS. Today, free, and now they are gradually accepting that it's a failed call. So for $229 billion, there aren't hospitals to show for. There aren't new built police stations to show for. There aren't sustainable roads to show for. Their one district, one factory is in total mess. One village, one dam. We can't even find the dark pits that eventually they presented to us. We can't even find them again. The rains have washed them off. $1 million, one constituency has nowhere to be found. All these were not gotten out of the $229 million. Now the COVID funds that were received, Ghana received a lot of money, and we know that. It was publicized. Everyone knows that. The COVID funds that we've received, till now, the finance minister is unable to account for. In fact, when you mention accounting for it, he just runs away. Parliament has sought him to come and just account what you used it for, and then you can ask for more. And then it's missing. We cannot find it. I am talking about the things that we were expecting this $229 billion to have done for NPP. We can't find them. And this is not part of what we got for COVID. That is it. After all is said and done, you realize that the Ghanaian woman or man cannot be stretched further. But then there is a booming industry, which is the electronic transaction industry, where everybody is now partaking. My mother sends mobile money, who is not illiterate. My grandmother sends mobile money. Everyone, every market woman now has a mobile money account. Today, it is easy to pay with mobile money than even going to withdraw from the bank or from an ATM vending machine to pay anything. And so what? Electronic Baumia, is that his name? Baumia decides that that will be the best thing to tax the Ghanaian with. In fact, it will touch on so many people. And so they decide that why not? Let's go for E-levy. So we have to pass it at all costs. And we all were here, the process it took for us to pass the E-levy. The resistance that the majority in Parliament faced in passing of the E-levy. Eventually, they even had a problem because their numbers were not up to. And forced our hands to pass the E-levy because, in their own words, E-levy was a savior. It is either E-levy or IMF. And we have, or they had established the IMF was the worst that you could ever attempt into going into as a country. In Kennedy Japan's own words, he says that it's only a failed government that goes into IMF. So if you've not failed, you will not be doing anything in IMF. And so no, instead of going to IMF, I have a few MPP colleagues who will tell you, say, we won't go to IMF for NDC to laugh at us. We would rather make sure that this E-levy comes to pass. So much success. It promises so much. And so let's go to E-levy. Our hands were forced. E-levy was brought on board. 1st May, effective. In fact, when it was passed, it didn't even take up to 2 weeks for E-levy to start working. And then we are being deducted. And so our savior has finally come. In fact, we are just tired. Just help us any way you can. You've taken what you want to take. Help us and let's go forward. And that is where it comes. Now we are being taxed E-levy. Only for government to come and tell us that. They are not even realizing up to 15%. In fact, they are realizing only up to 10% of what they expected to realize out of E-levy. And so that means it's a failure. Now the question everyone keeps asking, now that we are headed to IMF, are we cancelling E-levy? A lot of people who are not political at all, who are not related to anything politics, or who are not interested in politics, keep asking on social media and even me in my personal DM that are we going to cancel E-levy now that IMF is here? We are going to IMF. Does it mean that once again the NPP, Akufo-Addo and Bawumia, and his finance minister have proven to us again for the 100th time that they are so incompetent, they have no clue how to manage the economy like they said they had. And in fact, they are doing trial and error on us. These were the same people who in opposition sat at town hall meetings, read scripts with their big English as though they knew how to draw the whole picture and Ghana would be saved in their hands. They made it sound so easy. Bawumia made it sound like it was a simple calculation that he, the economic wizard, so-called economic wizard, knew how to handle. Today we are in power, and they couldn't even predict whether their E-levy could work or not. They said it will work. They had done all the checks. Today, how many months after E-levy? From May. We have just entered July, and we've realized that it's so hopeless that we indeed have to go to IMF. Is that where we've gotten to? Now, when I see some of these things, I always say that as an NDC member, I am not surprised. I'm not thrown aback because we have always known what these people are. We've known them for what they are. And so I'm not surprised. But I keep asking the foot soldier, the normal Ghanaian, the neutral person, or the floating voter, what else would MPP do for you to realize that this is the worst choice that anyone has made as an individual? What else would MPP do for you to realize that they are a complete failure, they are a fraud, that they came to steal, kill, and only to destroy? I will try to even quote the Bible like how our finance minister has been quoting the Bible. You know, when he was doing that from the onset, it was to cover up his schemes. Because in Ghana, we are so religious that when somebody appears to be religious, quoting the Bible, wearing white all the time, being humble and holding their own bags, we see that this person is so clean, they can never harbor any evil intentions. But we've gotten to the end of the road and we've realized that he was the master schemer. And so today we can say whatever we want to say. But then the Bible describes the devil as somebody who comes to kill, to steal and destroy. And in my own way, I would just say that MPP is an exact replica, if not the actual devil himself. The things they've destroyed in this country, I know we would go there, but when a man who has the country at heart decides that I have invested so much money into building houses for judges, and I have made my personal promise to God to build a cathedral, and so I want to build, then you destroy something that is less than 7 years old just to build your cathedral that you alone promised to God. Not thinking about the amount of money that we are losing. The white man with whom we go and borrow money from would never look at these things and decide that, let me just collapse buildings, because they think about loss. They know that money went into building something, and so they cannot just destroy it. Whose money was that? But the black man who has nothing decides that I can spend money in any way I want after I can go and borrow again. I can spend money on my private jets. After all, I am the president. They just do not know how to do things humbly, with modesty. And that is Akufo-Addo for you. The number of journalists who are being sought after, who are being chased, who are being killed, people who man up to talk, whose lives are in danger, are example of the people that NPP does kill. And as for the stealing, we cannot talk about it. I'll just give you one example, which is the COVID funds, that we have no idea how it was used. When you talk, they'll tell you that they were sharing hot meals that we cannot trace. This is what the NPP will tell you that they were doing. Senna, this is where we are as a country, that the NPP will come to steal, kill, and destroy. I leave it to the religious people. I leave it to the Christians and the Muslims who cannot see clearly what these people are up to. I am saying that this is the last straw. IMF is obviously the last straw. And if any, I was thinking that when any NPP comes out today to defend the indefensible, I think that they are bold. But I really hope that they will channel this boldness into something that will benefit the country, instead of the continuous deceit that this country is facing. This is the last straw. The courage and the firmness with which the NPP came out since 2019 to say that they will never enter IMF. During 2016, 2015, how they came out to say that it was the worst thing that could ever happen to a country. Today, shamelessly, the same Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah who described going to IMF as chewing the bones of meat, chewing the meat and leaving it with bones. In Chi, he said that and that is the only way that you go to IMF, when you have chewed all the meat and it's left with bones. And that is what he described John Dramani Mahama going to IMF as. Today, he's the same person who said that, is the one who released that letter. He released it to the government, to the public. So tell me if Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah is a serious person at all. Tell me if the finance minister sees us as fools. He said, are we no more a proud nation? Tell me if Kennedy Japan will take back his words, as it's only a failed government. Failed. So today, in their own words, NPP is a failed government. We have said it long ago, but they have justified it right now. Completely failed government. So we are going to IMF now. Here we come. But I keep insisting that you could have targeted something and you didn't really realize the results that you were expecting. But what you've said about it in the past is what will come back and haunt you. And that is what NPP has been suffering from day one. Probably if they hadn't said so much about IMF, they would have gone with just a few backlash and then been able to sustain it. Look, we tried this and that, it didn't work, so we wanted to try this. Every single thing that they said they would never do, they have done. And everything that they said they would do, they have not been able to do. Fraudulent people, a mistake of a party. That is where we find ourselves here today. I like to speak to the floating voter or the viewers that are watching that sometimes the decision lies in our hands. It's not always giving people chances, explaining, giving excuses, and then you allow them in, and one more time they break your heart, and you are screaming, crying and wailing, and the MPP are destroying us, the MPP are this. You knew it. You knew that the kind of promises they were making in 2016 was just overboard. It just couldn't be realized. No sensible human being could believe that they could be able to achieve all that they had promised for. But you believed it. You allowed them. They are disappointing. You are still giving excuses. And to the MPP themselves, the communicators, including my friend Protocol here, sometimes it's just not worth touching. Sometimes just rather lean on your credibility. Allow yourself to speak the truth. So that in other cases, when you are saying anything at all, people will say, no, he's an MPP, all right. But when he says it, that means it's true. Because he doesn't defend the indefensible. So MPP is a failed nation, Senna. MPP is a failed party. They have no clue, no idea. They said they had the men. They said their vice president was the best man for the economy. He's clueless. He stands there and says this when it is about another party and says the other when it's about his own party. Akufo-Addo is a liar, the biggest scam of the decade. Finance minister is just a stooge who has just been pushed there to cover up a certain space. And everything is being done by anyone. They have nobody. Today I want to tell everybody that they have nobody. They have no clue. And they are only interested in filling their tummies. And so if I am an MPP today, if I am a wise person today, I'll just be cautious and say that never again. Because they have pronounced themselves as failures already. They have shown that they have nothing to offer. So eventually, we just sit up, round up ourselves. I will say I told you so. But I'll just say that we should always be careful of how we trash people when we haven't sat in their seats before. I remember His Excellency John Dramani Mahama said one thing, 2015, the end part of 2015. And he said that, you haven't sat in my seat before. You have nothing. You know nothing about governance. You have never been, at the time, Akufo-Addo had not been a vice president before. Neither was he president. And the same for Bawumia. So you do not judge me on things you don't know. That is what His Excellency John Dramani Mahama told him. And eventually, here we are. You've gotten the power. And all that you said you could do, you've not been able to do it. It's such a shame. All I can say is that I am happy that eventually the last straw has been drawn. Whoever wants to see beyond this, I don't know what they want to see. But MPP should never be allowed to come near, close to anything governance in this country. They should never be allowed into power to do anything whatsoever. Because they are total failure. They have their lives have just come to an end. So now, I will leave it here, and then I'll just say that we are glad that eventually we are making way to where they are making way to where they never said they will. And obviously that is not going to help either. But we will survive anyway.
Thank you, Jifa. I like you will survive anyway.
No, we'll survive.
Well, you said that the desk stock is actually 391. 391.
Oh, so it has like 351
yes.
to 391.
And I'm sure it's growing. It's going further because of the depreciation of the cedi. One of the factors that keeps it running amok. Suleimana Abdurrahim from Tamale says, my passionate appeal to His Excellency President Mahama is he should use his 2024 campaign money to build cheap compounds for Ghanaians, as he did in 2015, because the IMF has won the election for him already. Slight Savior Semenya says they have no clues when they were boasting that in 2017-2018 they were doing better before COVID hit the economy. Basically, they were running an IMF program. They think we don't know or don't read. He sent that from TechB. Israel Benan says, the MPP government knew how to steal money, state money and property, more than to solve the problems of Ghanaians. Even they put unqualified workers as okay, this is specific. Nibedu Mayor says, good morning, and I agree with Comrade Mona. Last month I was caught unaware. They got me. But for this month, I have looked sharp. So I know that the 10% they had last month has automatically dropped by wise decision. There's Federico Poku says MPP led Akufo-Addo and his 125 ministers has no shame. They are going to the IMF. I laugh, sir. Let me borrow the words of Oslo. So if governance was about borrowing, my last born at age 8 can easily govern this country. Gafari is also joining us from the Savannah region. Sana, when I heard that Ghana is heading back to IMF, I feel sorry because MPP they are reaping what they sow. May Allah save us from this corrupt mismanagement. Kobla says, okay, good morning to Sana. Please tell protocol, he and his so-called solid economic management team utilized the good work laid down by the NDC economic team to attain good grades in 2017 and 2018. Mama has told you guys, time will judge us. Sana No Cancer says, sometimes I get amazed hearing MPP communicators alluding our economic woes to Russia-Ukraine war. My question is, how much percentage volume is our trading with these two countries as compared to our trading business transactions with other nations? Kaidebi Steve says MPP government is just like a dog that vomits and goes back to lick its vomits. They told us after the implementation of the E-levy they will not go to IMF. Dr. Bawumia should resign because the solid economic management team has failed woefully. disaster, and clueless government. Emmanuel Kumson says, to be honest, if Dr. Bawumia gathers the guts to continue doing politics after 2024, and Ghanaians also allow him, then I will know that our country's woes are not is not because of corrupt and incompetent government, but due to the fact that the entire country is sick. Dawuda Ibrahim Brahima says, are we now HAPIC? Where is the solid economic management team? Have they also forgotten their members? Everyone should be careful when you contemplate taunting someone just to undo him or her, else God will throw at you what you can't handle. He sent that from Tamale. Agbenyo Samuel Kofi is also joining us. Says Dr. Nyao Nyao Tamakule and all others that know Nana do well said it was not safe to hand over the destiny of this country into the hands of a Kufuor, but we played ethnic politics with it and gave this government, this country to a Kufuor. Here we are, and Ghana is doomed forever beyond redemption. Kakwano says it is unfortunate to see very youthful guys destroying their future by telling lies in defending a group of diabolical old men coming together as a government. In fact, looking at the physiological chemistry of this MPP guy, I leave it there. Yeah, Jones says, Massa, the previous government did invest in so many things. The yield is what the Kufuor and Bawumia government squandered, and we have to go to the IMF again. They've forgotten the fact that at the beginning, he appointed as many as 125 ministers. Some were virtually doing nothing. By the end of his first term, by the end of his first term, were paid end of service benefits. Gaskia Amuda says sheer partisan posturing has brought Nanado Bawumia-led administration into a near economic collapse. But for the Arise demo, they would not have taken the recovery measure to go to the IMF. To quote Uncle Kwesi Pratt, they know their smoothness level. Prince Duzu, let me end with this one. Who says Uncle Kwesi Pratt? Hey, he said, grace everybody, especially Uncle Kwesi Pratt. A MPP government have taken back their own. Okay. When your economic fundamentals are weak, IMF calling will expose you. John Dramani Mahama will remain the visionary leader of all standards. He sent that from Tamale North constituency. I go to Mr. Pratt now.
I read the statement which was signed by the Minister of Information quite carefully. That statement said that the President has instructed his Minister of Finance to now start a formal engagement with the IMF. What does that mean? Does that mean that informal engagement had already started? And if informal engagement had already started, when did those engagements start? That for me is a critical matter. Because as of last week, leading members of government were still denying that they would have nothing to do with the IMF. So we would like to know when the informal engagements started. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important for all of us to understand that this government approach would not necessarily result in an IMF bailout. Government is making the approach to the IMF. The IMF will sit with government and examine government's request and enter into negotiations with government on what to do and what not to do and so on. These negotiations can fail. The IMF, on the basis of the facts that government makes available to them, can also decide not to grant the request of government. So those who think that IMF can solve the problem, even those who think that the IMF can solve the problem, it is not Uhuru yet. There is still some distance. We know as a fact that some countries have been negotiating with the IMF for 5 years, still negotiating with the IMF for 5 years. Sri Lanka has been negotiating with the IMF for well over 12 months, and there's no resolution yet. So this statement from the Minister of Information does not mean that we are getting an IMF bailout. and I think it should be clear to everybody. We may or may not get an IMF bailout. Now, if government has come to the point where government thinks that the way out is an IMF bailout, what if we don't get the bailout? This same government only recently had come to the conclusion that the way out was the imposition of the E-levy. It turns out that that didn't work. Now they have another alternative, which is to go to the IMF. The question I'm asking is that what if this doesn't also work? Where would we go? Now, we should be asking ourselves why we are where we are today. Why this government, after all the protestations, has decided to go to the IMF for a bailout. Why? What is the situation we are dealing with? Senator, the situation is very, 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 very bad. The economic conditions of Ghana today are so horrible. And I think it's important to demonstrate that in more graphic terms so people can understand. What is the situation? The situation today, and the Ghanaian economic situation today, is that if we got a visiting head of state and he went to Flagstaff House and we want to serve him with a cup of tea, we need to borrow to be able to serve the visiting head of state with a cup of tea. The situation today is such that if the president drives from his Nima residence to the Flagstaff House, the petrol he uses is bought with borrowed money. I hope you are getting the picture. The situation today is that Ghana doesn't have enough money to construct 1 inch of gutter at Abelempe. 1 inch of gutter at Abelempe. The situation today is that if we don't borrow money, we cannot pay civil and public sector workers. It's impossible. The situation today is that this government, our government, the government led by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, doesn't have any money to do anything. That's where we are. You may think that I'm exaggerating. Look at the report that the IFS recently released at a press conference. If you look at the report that the IFS recently released at a press conference, what did it say? It said that if you put together all of our revenue, all the money we earn as a nation, if you put all of that together, you need 128% of that to service debts and to pay public sector emoluments. What does that mean? What does that mean? 2 line items. Public sector emoluments and debt servicing. So public sector emoluments, to pay public sector emoluments, you need to borrow. 128% of total national revenue is far bigger than total national revenue. So to pay, after servicing debts, to pay public sector emoluments, you need to borrow. And after you have borrowed, 28% of your total national revenue, and added it to your national revenue, nothing is left to do anything. That's how horrible our economic situation is. Okay? Now, Senator, it is not true that this is the first time the MPP government is going to the IMF. This is the second time that the MPP government is going to the IMF. So when they were standing behind microphones and shouting that we will never go to the IMF and so on, they were lying. Sana, when this government assumed power, this country was already in an IMF program. This government decided to extend that program by 1 year. Was that not going to the IMF? When they decided to extend the IMF program by 1 year, we went to the IMF. We accepted conditionalities of the IMF for 1 more year. So it is not true that this is the first time this government is going to the IMF. It is also not true that we are going to the IMF because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Ukraine-Russia war. Because when we went for the extension of the IMF program, there was no COVID-19 pandemic. And there was no Ukraine-Russian war. The first time this government went to the IMF, these things did not exist. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Now, we've been to the IMF before. Under President Akufo-Addo, we've been to the IMF before. What happened when we went to the IMF? Nothing. Zilch. We continue going down and down and down until we hit rock bottom and went below rock bottom. Now we are below rock bottom. So going to the IMF, really, this government has demonstrated that it doesn't solve any problem. They went, they came back, and no problem was solved. The problem got worse. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Now, let us try and understand the full implications of going to the IMF. You know, if you go to the IMF, you get some money. You get some money. They give you some money. So one of the things you get from going to the IMF is that you get some money. And then there's some fine English they've been throwing at us. That if you go there, you go there for policy credibility. So two things. You get cash and you get policy credibility. What does all this mean? The cash you're going to get from IMF is not cash which is given to you so that you can continue to build roads, continue to construct gutters, continue to provide potable water for your people and so on. That cash is given to you so that you can pay your loans. I hope you understand what I'm saying. They give you money to fill the hole you have created in your economy. So let nobody think that we are going to the IMF to get money to build roads, to grow food, and so on. That is not the purpose. You get money, but that money only gives you a certain stability. That stability which enables you to continue paying your debts to all those institutions in the colonial metropolis. That is the purpose of giving you that money. Now, when they talk about policy credibility, what are they talking about? What the IMF does is that when they give you that money to bring you up to the level where you can pay your debts, you understand? It sends a signal to the international community, especially to the international finance community, that now you are in a position to borrow. You can pay when you borrow. That is all the policy credibility they talk about. That policy credibility is not about establishing your capacity to produce potable water for your people. That policy credibility is not about your capacity to extend social services to your people. That policy credibility is simply about your ability to borrow more and to pay your loans. Finish. That's all. Nothing more. You see, we are talking about the government's attempt, and it is just an attempt, to secure an IMF bailout. Don't let us talk as if this is the first time in history that any government is going for the same measure. In Ghana, I recall very, very clearly, 1982, 1982-83, this country went for an IMF World Bank program, if you remember. We went for an IMF World Bank program, which was then described as the Economic Recovery Program. Did our economy recover? When we went for the IMF and the World Bank package, did our economy recover? It didn't. Do you remember the conditions which were given at that time? I will mention a few. The first condition which we were given when we went for the IMF World Bank bailout in 1982 was that we should devalue the cedi. We should weaken the value of the cedi. We should introduce measures which made the cedi weaker than it already was. Devaluation of the cedi. It was one of the measures. The other measure that we were compelled to do was withdrawal of subsidies from the social sector. So we were compelled to withdraw subsidies from health, from housing, from education, and Kobinini. Withdrawal of subsidies from the social sector. Then they came up with another condition. Retrenchment of labor. Sack your workers. Sack your workers. The workers in the civil service, sack them. Sack the workers in the public service. And so on. Retrenchment of labor. Now, as a result of this conditionality of retrenchment of labor, within 1 year, 300,000 workers lost their jobs. 300,000 workers lost their jobs. 1983, 300 workers lost their jobs. The situation we had, in which, if you got an accident and you went to a hospital, those days, no doctor would attend you, you would not be admitted into that hospital unless you had money to pay. You remember that? That was called cash and carry, if you remember. It was an IMF condition. IMF condition. Withdraw subsidies on the social sector, including health. It was so bad that if you had an accident and you didn't have money in your pocket, you would die. Because no hospital would admit you. It was an IMF condition. One of the conditions that we had to endure in 1983 was what? Privatization of state enterprises. Massa, by the time the PNDC left office, more than 2/3 of the factories that Nkrumah had established under the Nkrumah government's import substitution program had been sold. In fact, if I say sold, it's even nice. Had been destroyed. Because all those privatized enterprises did not survive privatization. Very few survived privatization. Today, if I ask you to name those entities who survived privatization, which one can you name? The only ones that come to my mind immediately are Golden Tulip and Moving Pig Ambassador. They are the only ones who survived privatization. Black Star Line died. State Fishing Corporation died. Tema Shipyard and Dry Dock is suffering from is in a coma and so on. Look around. Abosu Glass Factory. Mention them. Kede Match Factory. Kumasi Shoe Factory. It was the Mahama Mills administration who tried to revive it. I'm not even sure what the state of that factory is today. The cattle ranch, which was established at Abeime, the cannery, the food cannery which was established in Bolgatanga and so on, all of them collapsed under IMF World Bank bailout. So if you're going back there today, what new are we expecting? I recall when President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was campaigning for election, you remember what he told us? He told us that these IMF packages, they are so terrible that we should never go there. And one of the arguments made by His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Alhaji Bawumia, what did he tell us? That because we went to the IMF, they had imposed a condition of freezing employment in the public sector. And the freezing employment in the public sector was so terrible that we should vote the Mahama regime out. You remember? I'm not saying it. He said it. Alhaji Dr. His Excellency Mahmoud Bawumia, that's what he told us. Okay? Why? They were urging newly trained nurses to vote massively against the Mahama administration because that's taking us to the IMF, and the IMF had frozen employment in the public sector. I lie. If I lie, just tell me. I'll stop talking if I lie. Now, they have gone there again. They've gone there again because they went there before and they are going again. They should be telling us what conditions they expect that the IMF would impose this time. I don't want to be a soothsayer. But given the track record of the IMF, my goodness, I would not be surprised at all if they start raising questions about free SHS. I would not be surprised at all if the IMF comes and says, but this free HSS we are doing, if you are this broke, how do you fund it? Cancel it. You wait and see. I'm not a prophet, I'm not a soothsayer, but wait and see. Whether the free HS would not come under attack, whether it will not be seen as a reckless policy by the IMF. That is their track record. That is what they've always done. They've always attacked access to education as a means of saving money so that we can pay our creditors. And I'm quite sure that this is going to come under possible attack. Another possibility is simply that our capacity to create jobs is going to be limited. Because if you are creating jobs, if you are using your money to create jobs and so on, how do you pay your creditors? And the IMF, its primary business is to ensure that you pay your creditors. You understand? And if its primary business is to pay your creditors, how is it going to allow you to create jobs when your creditors have not been paid? Simply wouldn't make sense. You understand? So, I think that, look, it is important for us to begin to look at the possible consequences of this running to the IMF for a bailout. You understand? Now, Senna, why are we so distressed? Why is the Ghanaian population so distressed? The Ghanaian population is so distressed because fuel prices are jumping into the sky. Fuel prices are jumping into the sky. That's one of the reasons. The Ghanaian population is so distressed because food prices are increasing by the minute. As we speak, over the last 2 or 2.5 years and so on, the price of maize has gone up by 400%. Price of maize. As we speak, the price of kenke has gone up by 300%. As we speak, which price hasn't gone up? Tell me one thing whose price hasn't gone up. So this is the relief Ghanaians are expecting. Ghanaians are expecting some relief which will make their life a little easier. Rent is gone up. Transport fares have gone up. Master, the cost of Obroni Wewu is gone up. I mean, not too long ago, we used to talk about Kofi Brookman. Yeah. Coffee broke man. It was supposed to be the poor man's food. Master, I dare you to go and buy coffee broke man. Why? I'm not going to use my own experience. You see, Randy Abbey, Dr. Randy Abbey, you know he hosts a program on Metro TV. Last week, he demonstrated on television screens the cost of coffee broke man. The coffee broke man he used to buy for 50 pesos is now 4 cedis for one. One lege roasted plantain is 4 cedis. If you buy 3, 12 cedis. If you're on the daily minimum wage, don't even dream of buying one lege roasted plantain. It's not possible. This is what Ghanaians want to be relieved from. How would an IMF bailout deal with these problems? You see, Senna, I don't like Paul Kagame very much. You understand? I'm deeply worried about Paul Kagame's human rights record. You dare not oppose Paul Kagame. He will deal with you. And he will deal with you in ways which are terrible. People go to Kigali, they see the neat streets as well. They come and say, hey, Paul Kagame is an exceptional head of state in Africa and so on. I don't buy that. Okay? But even him, sometimes he says some very wise things. Recently, Paul Kagame was telling us that the solution to Africa's problems are in Africa. And that he doesn't understand why his colleagues are traveling all over the world looking for solutions when the solution is in Africa. Paul Kagame says that, look, if you look at the enormous resources that Africa has, it doesn't make sense to be traveling around the world, especially in chartered aircrafts. I said, this is Paul Kagame. Okay? And I agree with him. Something happened last week which demonstrates our level of thinking. It happened in Ghana. I woke up one morning, I bought the newspapers, I was reading through the newspapers. My goodness. The government of Ghana had gone for a loan of $38 million to support agriculture. When the same government had committed close to 300 million to digging a hole to facilitate the building of a cathedral. You see our sense of priority. When we make money, we use it to build cathedrals. We use the money we make to build cathedrals and go and borrow money to invest in agriculture. Sana, our leaders, how do they think? What is in the heads of our leaders? Are you sure that there's brain matter in the heads of our leaders? Sometimes I wonder. But even if you have charcoal in your head, would you do that? Even if what is in your head is just charcoal, no brain matter, just charcoal. Charcoal, you have charcoal in your head. Would you use your money to build a cathedral and go and borrow money to invest in agriculture? Hey, Massa, I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. Now, if you behave like this, why wouldn't you go to IMF for a bailout? If the little money you make, you use it to build a cathedral, why wouldn't you go to IMF for a bailout? Now, Senna, I'm coming to the gravamen of the matter. The real gravamen of the matter. Why? Why are we here? What is happening is a system collapse, a systems collapse. That is what is happening. What is happening here is the same as what is happening in Lebanon, the same as what is happening in Sri Lanka, the same as is happening in all the countries which are pursuing a neoliberal agenda, not one of them is free from suffering what we are suffering in Ghana today. It is the collapse of the neoliberal agenda that is what we are facing. The pursuit of the neoliberal agenda, which has given all of our resources to multinational corporations originating from the colonial metropolis. That is what we are suffering. So the way out is not to go for a bailout program. The way out is a fundamental restructuring of our economy. And the IMF, the World Bank, Western governments will not advise any African or third world government to undertake a fundamental restructuring of its economy, because it's not in their interest. Now, when I talk about fundamental restructuring of the Ghanaian economy, what am I talking about? Senna, 1945, in Manchester, all the leaders of the African world, the Pan-African movement, met in Manchester in 1945. After deliberations, they came to the conclusion that Africa has a way out of its problems. One, we have to overthrow colonialism. That independent African states needed to rally together to build the United States of Africa. That thirdly, Africa needed to take control of its resources and exploit those resources for the benefit of the African people. Why? Today, if you read Nkrumah's book, Africa Must Unite, Nkrumah makes the point that Africa alone has more than 50% of the total resources of the world. And that's a fact. What don't we have in Africa? Lithium, uranium, gold, manganese, iron. What don't we have? Water resources. In fact, if you come to Ghana and you look at our water resources, it's amazing. Look at all the rivers that are crisscrossing Ghana. The Volta River actually comes all the way from Burkina Faso and empties into the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, Ghana has been the largest man-made lake in the world. All of these are resources. Look at the brilliant. Sometimes I wonder, if we had brilliant human beings, would we be where we are? But some of our citizens are brilliant. Look at Dr. Konote Aholu, the world's number one scientist on sickle cell disease. Is from Ghana. Professor Alote, a principle in mathematics is named after him, the Alote principle, and so on. We have all these brilliant people here. That's resource. If you go to a literary world, we have Ngugu, Wationgo, and so on. So Africa has no reason to be poor. The reason why we are here is the poverty of our leaders. Many of our leaders are brain dead. They are brain dead. The brain doesn't function again. It stopped functioning a long time ago. You have leaders with empty heads. Some of them, their heads may be filled with charcoal, but some of them, even the charcoal itself didn't enter the head. It's empty. You understand? That's why we are here. Sana, we have failed to realize the aspirations of the founding fathers. We have failed to realize the aspirations of the Modibo Ketas, the Ahmed Sekuturis, the Kwame Nkrumahs, and so on. We have failed to realize the aspirations. That's why we are here. We have not been able to own our own resources and exploit these resources for our benefit. That's why we are here. So the way out is a new paradigm of development. The way out is a new paradigm of development which makes us owners of our resources and which allows us to exploit these resources for our own benefit. Senna, today, Ghana is a producer of oil and gas. I lie? Ghana is a producer of oil and gas. If I lie, tell me.
Oh, yeah.
We have a refinery which was built by the Nkrumah regime sitting in Tema. When we dig our oil, we don't even refine it here. We take it abroad. And then we turn around to go and buy finished products. That's brilliant. We have brilliant leaders. Exceptionally brilliant leaders. They can't think. That's one of our problems. Today, as we speak here in this studio, and I've said this so many times, when I'm going to repeat it, I even feel tired. Ghana is the largest producer of gold in Africa, the whole of Africa. We produce more gold than any other country in Africa, more than South Africa. If you go to the whole world, the whole wide world, Ghana used to be number 5. Last week I was told that we have dropped to number 6. But that is still impressive. Number 6, the 6th largest producer of gold in the whole world. Senna, how much are we getting out of gold? The situation has become so bad that the Ochihini actually has told us that we should stop digging for the gold. It's useless. Don't dig for the gold anymore. Keep it in the soil. Because Ochihini is saying that he hears all these big men and women saying that we don't have the means to exploit the gold for our benefit and so on. And he says, if you don't have the means, why are you digging it? Keep it there. The gold will not rust. The gold, it doesn't rust, it doesn't decay. So leave it there. When we have the means, take it out and benefit from it. We, today, get only 2%, 2% of the value of gold that is exported out of this country. How can you develop? Why would you not go to IMF? And you think that if you go to the IMF for a bailout, the IMF would advise you that keep more than 2% of the value of your gold exported in your country? They won't. If you don't take time, they'll tell you that even the 2% is too much. Cut it to 1%. So that doesn't resolve the problems which confront our people. That doesn't resolve the problem at all. You remember all this controversy over our bauxite resources? Giddy. John Mahama has given it to his brother. You remember? How do they call the company? Exton Cubic. Yeah. That bauxite, who is controlling it now? Who is controlling it now? That is our problem. Bailout does not resolve this concrete problem. Sana, not too long ago, Ghana and La Côte d'Ivoire were ready to go to war. You remember? Over our oil resources. There's one particular place where we are digging oil from. La Côte d'Ivoire said, that is our oil. Ghana said, that is our oil. Generals in the La Côte d'Ivoire army came to us and said, if we dare go there, they'll fire at us, there'll be war. So, good counsel prevailed. And we decided to go for arbitration, international arbitration. We went to the international arbitration, and they said, oh, the oil actually belongs to Ghana. So Ghana, keep it. Are we keeping it? We surrendered this oil to that company, what do they call it? Something Mobile. ExxonMobil. To all those companies. We surrendered it to them. How much do we get out of that oil? Master, if La Côte d'Ivoire had won that case, what do you think La Côte d'Ivoire would have done with that oil? They would just have called Total and said, yes, sir, master, we got the oil from Ghana. Come and take it. That is why we are where we are. Now, today, technology is available on the open market. So this whole argument about we don't have the technology, that is why we have to bring in ExxonMobil, that is why we have to bring in the British company and so on, it doesn't make sense. Because you can actually buy technology on the open market. Not just that. Even under PNDC, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, the PNDC found it necessary when Chachu Chiketa was chief executive of the Ghana National Petroleum, how do you call GNPC? They found it necessary to begin to give us the resources we needed to exploit our own oil. That's why they bought the drill ship and so on. Another government came and said, we don't need it. They sold the drill ship, they sold all the equipment which had been bought, which was going to give us some measure of independence in the exploitation of our oil resources. Master, if you behave so badly to yourself and you go to IMF for bailout, are they going to tell you to go and buy another drill ship? And in any case, do you have the money today to buy the drill ship? So, you will get oil, you will get gas, but you cannot benefit from it. You will get oil and gas. What do you do with it? You give it to multinational corporations coming from the colonial metropolis. That is why we are where we are. Master, can you imagine something? The small that we get from the exploitation of our oil and gas resources, we've set up some non-governmental organization and pumped the money there. Sana, go and see what we do with that money. Some chief is celebrating his Akwasidai. Then bam, 1 million, take, go and celebrate Akwasidai. If I lie, tell me that I'm lying. Master, do I lie? No, you are from the government. If I'm lying, tell me. I cannot say anything. You can't say anything about it. Okay, that's okay. Let's move forward. The oil and gas we have, the money we get, you've taken part of that money and putting it in some NGO. Chief celebrating Akwasidai, chiefs Akwasidai. Then they take the money, boom, 1 million, give him. Go and do Akwasidai. Some chief is celebrating the 10th anniversary of his installment. They take, boom, and give him. Is that how to spend state resources? And if you spend state resources like this, why would you not go to IMF? Master, this IMF thing is as useless as anything. It won't solve any problem. We are going to get a worse situation. The suffering of Ghanaians is going to be exacerbated. That is even if they agree to give us the bailout. The suffering of the Ghanaian is going to get worse. It is not going to solve any problem. Until and unless we embark on a fundamental restructuring of the Ghanaian national economy and make Ghanaians the masters of their own destiny. Master, General Kutu Achempo, you remember him? That man who led Agbo, Salome and others to seize power on 13 January 1972. He is not one of those who went to Harvard or Oxford and so on. General Kutu Achempo, you know where he graduated from? Swedro Business College. He's a graduate of Swedro Business College. But General Kutu Achempo was so sensible that he signed a law making it mandatory for Ghanaians to have 55% stake in mining activities in this country. 55% stake. They said he didn't go to school proper. He only graduated from Swedro Business College and so on. We got rid of General Kutu Achempo. We brought in the Harvard educated, the Oxford miseducated and so on. We brought all of them in. What did they do? Today, Ghanaian stake in our mining industry is 3%. That's different from how much we get from export. When we export, we only get 2%. Our total stake in the industry is 3%. Look, one of the things that makes a lot of money in Ghana today is simply telecommunications, especially mobile telecommunication. It generates a lot of money. Look at the mobile telecommunications sector of the national economy. Tell me which Ghanaian interest is there. Tell me, which Ghanaian interest is there? So if you misbehave, if our leaders, brainless leaders, misbehave to this level, Master, Why would we not go to IMF for a bailout? Why would we not go to IMF for a bailout? And if we go to IMF for a bailout, the situation only gets worse. It gets worse. Every time we are going to the IMF, our situation has worsened. There's a little problem I have, and I'm hesitant to say it. Some of our friends in the NDC, they were standing on the sidelines and shouting, go to IMF. If you can't solve the problem, go to the IMF and so on. I hope they are happy that the government has gone to the IMF. Because they urged the government to go to the IMF. Are they happy that the government has gone to the IMF? You know, me, I'm predicting that this will be a total failure. When it becomes a total failure, it is not only the government which went to the IMF that we are going to blame. We are going to blame all those who are standing on the sidelines urging the government to go to IMF. They are also going to be responsible for the mess which is going to be created out of going to the IMF. I mean, our leaders can't think. You understand? Go to IMF, go to IMF, go to... They've gone to IMF now. Are you happy? Go to IMF. They've gone to the IMF now. Are you happy? I can't believe some of the things that happen. Look, if all we have to do is to go for elections, get elected and go to the IMF. As one of our listeners said, Sana, your kindergarten daughter, your daughter at kindergarten can rule this country. Get elected and then you surrender to IMF. IMF, come and do it for me. Me, I can't do it. I've lost. I can't do it. Who can run government like that? Why didn't we elect a Kredonko? Masa, a Kredonko can do this. This is not too difficult for a Kredonko. Going to IMF for a bailout, anybody can do it. A Kredonko could have done it perfectly. A Kredonko. We elect a Kredonko president of Ghana. The next day she says, the economic problems are too much for me. IMF, come and manage Ghana for me. Who can do that? All these people who came to us and so on, telling us all kinds of cock and bull stories, look at how they're behaving. I got a lot of hope. And I'm being very honest with you. When our president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, looked us in the face and said, we've got to move away from the Goggisberg economy. I said, my goodness, something can come out of this. So have we moved out of the Goggisberg economy? Goggisberg economy, have we moved out of the Goggisberg economy? And then the slogan, Ghana without aid. Hey, Ghana without aid. And Anuni, Ghana without aid. Is this Ghana without aid? Is this moving out of the Goggisberg economy? Master, slogans don't solve problems. Slogans, no matter how positive the slogans are, slogans do not solve problems. As for slogans, we heard too much from this government. And in the face of all this mess, Sana, in the face of all this mess and the expected mess that is coming, they are looking us in the face and shouting, break the 8. Break the 8! Hey, even when the 8 has not been broken, look at where we are. You want to break the 8? You want to kill us? Break the 8. And some of them, they have no shame. After creating this mess, this horrendous mess, they want to be presidents again. Oh. They want to be president. Hey, these people, what's wrong with them? They don't have shame. They don't fear Ghana. They don't fear the Ghanaian people. Oh. They have no fear for us. They've put their hands in our mouths and they think that we don't have teeth. Maybe we don't have teeth now, but the teeth, they will grow. So the fact that you put your hands in our mouth today and don't feel teeth, don't keep slapping on our pampamo, because tomorrow we may grow the teeth. Master, if you are growing teeth, we are not growing small teeth. Oh. We are growing the teeth that can tear your hand apart. You understand? So they should stop slapping on our pom-pom, because one day they will slap and one day the teeth will do something. What is this behavior? You have done all this to us. You fed us on slogans for 8 years. Fed us on slogans for 8 years. The prices are going up. Everybody is crying. You say, don't worry. I'm going to extend the 8 to 12. So you don't have any mercy on us. One of our viewers texted. Can you read that text again? He was advising Dr. Baumia to do something.
It will be difficult to find it.
Oh, find it and read it again, because it tells my whole story. Hey, after this, breaking the 8 again, break it. Break the 8. You break the 8 and then we do what? We go to 9. And then we go to 10. And we go to 11. And we go to 12. Yeah, what we? Master.
I think I found it. This is Emmanuel Kumsin. Says, to be honest, if Dr. Baumia gathers the guts to continue doing politics after 2024, and Ghanaians also allow him, then I will know that our country's woes is not because of corrupt and incompetent government, but due to the fact that the entire country is sick. That is Emmanuel Kumsin's comment.
Dr. Emmanuel Kumsin.
I only saw Emmanuel Kumsin. Yeah, I only saw Emmanuel Kumsin. Well, let's take a short break and come back. When we come back, I'll go through a few of your messages, and then we'll move on to the issue of the demonstration.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people.
The world has changed. Now the new normal demands that countries look within to develop their capacities and make strides in getting their economies back on track. In all of this, diplomacy is now more than ever the bridge linking these nations as they forge ahead. Of diplomatic affairs, complex issues will be explained as I sit with global change makers to discuss the new phases of bilateral and multilateral relations between Ghana and its development partners. I will also pique your interest on the many enterprises that are forces to reckon with in their own rights. My name is Harriet Nati, and this is Diplomatic Affairs.
Hello, what are you doing Tuesday to Friday, 7:30 to 9 o'clock p.m. every day? You should be watching The Couch. I'll tell you why. On Tuesdays, we talk social issues, lifestyle, health, all those everyday issues that affect us in the big ways. Late Wednesdays are for book reviews. Thursdays are for the hard talk, those socio-economic, policy-oriented, political questions that demand for the tough questions to be asked. And personality profiling Fridays, when we get to know the stories behind the winning personalities we love. Inspirational story from inspirational personalities. Hey, listen, you really cannot miss The Couch with me, Amma Pratt. Still, the only TV show with a hat.
Trasaco Estates, home to Accra's most beautiful and luxurious homes, presents its newest addition, Trasaco Springs, a premium master planned community of service plots surrounded by an exhaustive list of amenities. The gated community of Tema to Accra Motorway presents you the finest opportunity to own a land that suits your preferred size, budget, and payment terms. Trasaco Springs is open to you for development. Our on-site sales executives are ready. Call on 055 659 2658.
To the land of freedom.
Thank you very much. The station is Pan-African Television. The program is Alhaji and Alhaji. Thank you for making time. We're also live on Radio Go. Let me just take you through, say a big thank you to the other radio stations we are on. Like I said, Ahunto 92.3 FM here in the Greater Accra region. Shine FM, Akachi 96.9. Also in the Volta region, Hills FM at Dakru 91.7 is also in the Volta region. Newasi Radio, Katakrachi 89.7 in the Oti region. Sela Radio, Dabala 97.1, that's closer to where I come from, in the Volta region. Diamond FM in Tamale 93.7. Bewa Radio Yendi 106.5. Radio Kitawan in Sabuba 95.7. Benya FM in Elmina is on 105.7. Cape FM in Cape Coast 93.3. Global FM is on 105.1, is in Ho. And Volta 1 TV, we are also on Zebs FM 95.9 in Zebila. And True FM is on 92.5, it's Nadeso in the Eastern region. So those are the stations that are currently tuned into us. A few messages before I go. Now those messages were sent to me far earlier. This one is from Hardy in Pig Farm, who says, if a bachelor lies that he's married, he is only deceiving his manhood. Karma will hunt everyone who eats the sweat of another. The ordinary Ghanaian is suffering, and these nation wreckers are enjoying with their families and friends from the sweat of the ordinary citizens. Allah save Mother Ghana from this Calipo economy. That's what he says. There's also Ambassador Sampiale, who says MPP is a national poverty party, spreading economic virus by Baolaya. Be careful. No nose mask. Only IMF. That's from Ambassador Sampiale. Salam Atuak in Boku says, when this clueless government deliberately started collapsing the banks, I knew that the return to the IMF was imminent. There's Tafai Namran here, who is also joining us. Says, oh, so we are now going to IMF because of Russia-Ukraine war. To the tomatoes, kutumre, and Gary prices that have also increased astronomically comes from Russia and Ukraine, right? There's Alassane Mesuna, who is in Tema, who says it is good the prayers of the masses have now manifested as the economic messiahs choose IMF to deal with their incompetency. The taxpayers' money can now be monitored, regulated, and managed prudently. The mother serpent of corruption, Kufuor, can no longer charter private jets unnecessarily. He can't give away Ghana jet to Opongwea for free. Kufuor can no longer bath in the sky, and so our Brony saga will be investigated. Some more messages. Okay, this one is from. Okay, said people actually sent me a message from Steve Hanke. Says today I measured inflation in Ghana at a stunning 49.35% year on year. In a last-ditch effort, the government has begun negotiating with the IMF on a bailout deal. Spoiler alert: another IMF loan won't save Ghana's economy. Like its past 17 IMF programs, a new one will fail. That's a Steve Hanke, and a white man. That's his view. This is Komla, who says anyone who blames Mahama for doomsday is the most damn human being in Ghana. They should come and tell us how much power they produced during Buzia and Kufuor regimes. That's coming from Komla. Abi Bantus is also joining us. Isn't it amazing and shocking what this government, Nana Kufuor and Bawumia government, said about IMF and His Excellency John Mahama? This government has borrowed more than any government in the history of Ghana, plus taxes, yet nothing to show for. They celebrated Kinki and Wache party because they say Ghana is out of the IMF. Is that party not causing financial loss to the state? Abi Bantu sent that all the way from Italy. Dennis Yoakwete says Ghana is a member of the IMF, and I find it difficult to understand why politicians will play the ostrich in the face of the obvious, especially when the IMF today is not the same IMF of yesterday. We can only hope that by now politicians across the political divide will learn their lessons the hard way and be measured henceforth about what they say, as they are not God and have no idea as to what the future holds. Even as we hope that the right aspects will lead the way to the IMF and not left solely to the current finance minister, who himself is a problem to deal with. We shall overcome, but we must first turn to 2 Chronicles 7:14. That's Dennis Yao Akwete. Let's move on to the discussion on the demonstration. I have 30 minutes, which means that the comments will have to be very, very brief. I'll start with Bernard Mona. who played a key role in that demonstration?
Thank you, Senator. The people of Ghana decided, particularly various groups, that instead of sitting at different corners and talking about the same issues of economic hardship that has been exacerbated by poor policies, poor planning, and poor programming by the government, that we should rally our energies so that we will put together a formidable force that will be able to put pressure on our government to lessen the burden of our society. So you had political parties like the NDC, some members of the MPP, the PNC, some members of the CPP, GUM, among others, in fact the APC. Then we also had civil society organizations, ASEPA, COPEC, and many others. We also had individuals and pressure groups that all joined forces. We had some chiefs, and in fact some communities. I know that the Adan Songo people, they also participated fully because they have some issues relating to the Adan Songo projects. And all of them, we rallied together to form what we termed as the Arise Ghana. So we notified the Ghana police as early as on the 1st of June of our intention to manifest our unhappiness about the way things are going. Food prices are on the high side. Inflation is nothing to write home about. I'm sure that you have just read what is supposed to be the actual inflation of this country, not the government-cooked inflation, which is about 30%. You also know that fuel prices have reached an alarming level. Above all, unemployment rate has risen to a level never seen in our country before. In the midst of this, government is busy spending our money on reckless projects that they describe as priority projects. And so there is the need to vent that anger. You also do know, for instance, that officers of prison service have not received their clothing allowances for a considerable period of time, over 8 months. And the police service itself, some of the security agencies are suffering, leading to election 2020. A police officer that I know in the Upper West region told me that all of a sudden their salaries were increased by threefold. Yes, so if you are receiving 1,000, they increase your salary by 3,000 to 3,000. And so they thought that that was going to be maintained and that a new government will come and reverse it. Soon after collection of that, their salaries went back to the old order and making their lives even now more miserable. So all these pressures are in the society. So when people cannot find to eat, people cannot get to work, people cannot get income, and cost of living has reached an unbearable level, we have no option than to tell the government. You speak, the government throws your talks away. So we intended manifesting. So 1st June, we notified the Ghana police. They called us for a meeting on the 2nd of June. At the meeting, they wrote a letter to me that they will not allow us to do a 48-hour non-stop demonstration. We responded. The response attracted the IGP to invite the group to meet with them. And then when we met at the IGP's instance, we could not agree on any changes. So we had to go and come back. On the 8th, when we met again, we decided to reduce the time, because instead of doing 48-hour non-stop and sleeping over at the Christ the King traffic light, we chose that we will now stay there up to 10 o'clock. The police requested we write formally to notify them of the new changes. We went and did that. On the 13th, they wrote back to us thanking us for the cooperation we have had. And they commended her for the police-civil relationship. On the 20th, I was called that they had a letter for me and that they are not happy and they cannot do up to 10 p.m. And so we should reduce the time and start early. I said it is not within their remit to determine what time we want to start. Then on the 22nd, a meeting was called. No, they wrote another letter and told me that because we are unyielding, they are likely to go to court. I sent a team to go and meet with them, and the team met with them and we brought the time to 8 p.m. This was agreed between Arise Ghana and the Ghana Police Service. The next day, at around 4 p.m., I was called. Someone wants to meet me. I directed the person to Osu, only to realize that it was a bailiff. They had gone to court. After we had reached an agreement, they had gone to court. And they sued Arise Ghana and singled me out as a respondent. So I took it and I forwarded it to my lawyers. When my lawyers read through, they said the document is not complete because the date to move the motion was not stated in the thing. I called back the bailiff. The lawyer said, no, the bailiff may not know. He's only been sent. So on Friday, they went to court and did their own search to now realize that it will be moved on Monday. And they said, then it means that it will not have matured because they needed to notify us at least 3 days. So I received something Friday, Thursday in the evening, 4 p.m. So we had only 1 day. Yet, as the only person who received it, we responded. We got to court and the police was not ready to move the motion. They were rather calling for the court to adjourn the matter so that they can go and file a supplementary affidavit. In the end, the court ruled that demonstration cannot be stopped. It is our right to demonstrate. We had notified the police amply, but made adjustment to the route. There, our lawyer pointed out that, look, there is nowhere in the rules that say that somebody should determine the routes that participants want to use. Otherwise, you are giving, but the court had done its ruling and the judge was going. So eventually, we had to file an appeal. Then the next day, when we were to do the demonstration, the police walked to me, that was on the Tuesday, and said they wanted to have a discussion with leadership to see which route we wanted to use and what time we start. This was around 12 o'clock-ish. And this was led by COP Yohunu, ED Lancer, that's the Greater Accra commander. I think I saw Habiba, I saw Doku, and Awini. So I told them that the other team members will come. So I called them and they came. During the meeting, before the meeting, I was trying to ask our people to go back to allow us to have entrance with the police. Some of these people that I was telling to go back were in fact Mufti. And I said, go back. And then they told me that no, they are police officers. Right in front of these commissioners of police. They said they were police officers and they were stationed there to protect their bosses. So I turned to COP Yohunu and said, these people say they are your men. So I cannot instruct the police on what to do. You are the senior officer. Take charge. And I went to the other side where we could control our own security and we urged them to control. When we went for the meeting, and then they asked, they wanted to know what time we start and then the route. Take note. They asked us of the time and the route. And we told them that we will go through the Nima police station, get to Akwaje. We will not go to the Flagstaff house because you said you don't want us to go there. We'll turn towards the ministries on the first day. They said, oh, you are not going to the Flagstaff house? We said yes. Then all of them sat in approval. Yohunu picked his phone and made a call. When he finished, he handed the phone and the call to Awini and started shaking off his head. Then I said, Commander, anything the problem? He said, no, we cannot use the route. I said, I thought you are in control. But you are taking instructions from somebody and you are telling me we cannot use. Then you are not in control here. There's no need having any discussion with you. So we descended. But when we were leaving, we met Uncle Totobi, who said, "What?" I said, "Your police are not in control, and yet they called us to come and waste our time." So he went to find out the reason. And they said that, oh, they would not allow us to use this site. We went and were addressing our crowd. When we finished addressing the crowd in the Kwame Nkrumah Amusement Garden, we were walking out, myself, Asedun Ketia, and Ofosu Ampofo. So we took a walk to go and see why the police had blocked the place we wanted to block. They took aim at us, started firing shots at us. At this time, I could not see Yohunu, I could not see Idi. All of them had left the ground. Then the same persons that were in Mufti, that said they were police people, they were at the other side, just on the hill, when you have to take the overpass. They were there. So while the police were shooting at us, they were from that side also throwing at the police. Police versus police. Oh. Then we moved. But when we wanted to go forward, our own security pushed us back. So we moved all the way back into the circle. When we got into the circle, we stood there for about 30 minutes. We were so confused about what was happening. Eventually, I said, look, let's bring, in fact, it was Asedun Ketia that said, look, we can't be roaming around. Either we are going somewhere, we should start going, then the police can decide to kill us, or something. Then I said, no, let's rally our people and start to talk to them so that we can have a coordination. Otherwise, someone will take to this direction and then we'll see that the group is scattered. So we massed in the middle of the circle, brought the Kia truck on which our speakers were on, and we started speaking. Uncle Totobi was standing by. I had not spoken. Asedun Ketia had not spoken. Many people were speaking and giving messages. Ofosu Ampofo finished speaking. And all of us said, okay, in view of these attacks, we can't go anywhere. So we are here. Before we realized, the police started moving. And if you have the video, you can see. You see the speed with which they were moving into the crowd. Shooting, throwing tear gas, firing and, water. And this time, they were shooting into the Kia truck in which the leaders were addressing the crowd. Alhaji and Ketia said we should stay so that they can kill the leaders. Totobi was trying to go and confront the police for the madness, and his bodyguard heckled him to the ground. And then some people supported and they took him to the other side. Alhaji and Ketia dived in the Kia and was just lying down in the Kia. Baba Jamal was on the side. Ofosu Ampofo tried to scale the Kia, and then his leg hooked onto the embankment. So he fell. Look at that height. He just fell like that. When he fell, a tear gas just landed in front of him and went into his face. I managed to jump. When I jumped down, I turned and Ofosu was lying down. So I was rushing to go and aid Ofosu out of the situation. And the boys just took me and said, look, let's secure you and come for Ofosu. We came. I went and stood at the far end. Ofosu came. They poured so much water on him so that he can get to breathe. We were there and they still surged forward to us. We entered into the lorry station. They climbed to the top and they were shooting into us. I moved as far as New Plant Station. These police officers were still shooting into us. And persons who had nothing whatsoever to do with the demonstration, people did not even know, commuters, you were shooting tear gas into the middle of the articulator station, New Plant Station there. So we were so confused. We didn't know what the crime was. Police decided to throw at themselves, and then they turned to attack us. We did not move out of the arena, and yet we were beaten. We said, fine. Before we could leave, I could move around. People started calling me that the police had issued a statement. I said, issue a statement. When this confusion is ongoing, the police had the presence of mind to go and issue a statement and send to the media. And when I read the statement, they sent it to me quickly. When I read the statement, I'm like, Is this okay? Because this statement that you have sent me, they have sent to you, the media, they are stating that we the protesters, decided to start to attack them. And that number two, they had about 12 people from the police that are injured. Number three, the demonstration is still ongoing. The situation is not under control. And yet, you could rush to go and issue a statement. For what end? I have not seen anywhere, even in the face of war and invasions. If you go to Ukraine, Russia will tell you the number of casualties on the side of the Ukrainians and on its side. Even in war reporting, you report the casualties on your side and on the side of your enemies. In this instance, the police only could tell the number of people that were affected by their side and not at our side. And yet you brutalized us. Students who were coming, you threw tear gas at them. In fact, one police officer did well because one of the students fell off and the police officer carried the student, a young lady, to safety. Yeah. So you did this. So we met and said, no. Police decided to infiltrate the whole demonstration. You brought in your militia, as we have always known.
You have to learn from me.
I'm learning. As you always have, we always know that you have your militia. You use the militia to brutalize us. And then, before we can realize, you started looking for leaders to arrest. And in the night, that Tuesday night, virtually I escaped at 3 different places because the police came and cordoned. I went for PM Express. You can find out from the Joy people. The police came and surrounded the place. How I escaped is a different story we'll tell another day. So we assured you that, look, we had 2 things to do. We had 2 days demonstrations, we'll do the second day. The second day, we did it. And when we were to do it, I went to the police and said, I hope you will not do what you did on Tuesday went peacefully. Nothing happened. We passed through the Flagstaff house that they said we cannot go. They allowed so many security reasons for which we cannot use the place. We passed there, we only sang national anthem when we got to the Flagstaff house. Okay. We went to the Ministry of Finance, presented a copy of our petition, and then delivered it at the Parliament. 2 things that you can take home. These demonstrations testify that the people of Ghana are unhappy about the level of economic deterioration that we are facing. And that no amount of force, bombs, or nuclear power can stop the will of a determined people. 3, that we are unwilling to compromise on our rights enshrined in Article 21 of the 1992 Constitution. Whether we will be killed, whether we will be beaten, no matter the force against us, our right to mass action can never be toppled by any government. Okay. And so we succeeded in doing so. We have allowed for maybe 2 weeks. We told Parliament what we have done, what we have done. And then we are also hoping in the period leading to the 2 weeks, we shall continue our public engagements. Then at the end of the day, we shall take the demonstrations probably outside of Accra to the other regions so that people can vent their anger about the extent of economic hardship that confront all of us. We seek the lessening of the hardship and nothing more and nothing less.
Thank you. Let me jump immediately to protocol.
Yeah, Senator, I think that I don't intend to talk much on this particular demonstration that was staged by Arise Ghana group led by Chairman Mona. Huh? But it was led by you are one of the. He is one of the leading members. Okay. In fact, he is the doyen when it comes to demonstrations in Ghana. He has actually earned that particular name for himself. I think that demonstrations are legitimate ways of showing your disquiet and concerns to officialdom. So I would not begrudge anyone who would want to adopt that particular strategy as a way of, as it were, venting their spleen, or if you like, showcasing whatever things that bothers them. But my problem has to do with, because if you listen to the rendition of Chairman Mona, you get a sense that there was some kind of a calculated attempt by the police to brutalize them. But you see, there is always there is always one truth. Now, anytime someone brings his or her side of the story, you may also want to juxtapose it with the other side of the story so that you can synthesize to be able to find out the real issues that are actually happening. But when footages began to come out from the media in respect of the demonstration, I was taken aback because I was not happy with the kind of gory images that I saw. And I asked myself, why would a demonstration turn violent like this? So for me, I would urge because look, like I said, every political party would want to use such a tool to press home their demands to the government of the day. So I would want to appeal to the police service to always take a neutral position on these particular matters, because most often than not, their demeanor and position sometimes doesn't augur well for the democracy that we are nurturing. Because if we were to sit here and I also have to recount some of the ugly incidents that greeted some of the demonstrations that was led by civil society organizations during the regime, and even party members during the regime of the NDC, it is almost akin to what actually has happened to the Arise Ghana group. So for me, I would want to urge that in building a very good democracy, even though our democracy is infant, we need to imbibe certain principles that would be encompassing and actually be a very good telling story for other countries to emulate. So basically, this is what I think I would say.
Before I go to differ, this is Dr. Percy. Not surprising that once again there is talk about Ghana returning to intensive care with the IMF. The IMF exists as a key element in the toolbox of Western imperialism to keep the global system of domination and control functional. Western imperialism now under U.S. hegemony requires that 1. Our neo-colonies remain permanent providers of raw materials at prices they fix, and 2. We stay as market for value-added commodities from these imperial centers, also at prices they fix. This guarantees that our neo-colonies will fall into debt and must thus borrow to stay afloat. So long as Ghana and other neo-colonies stay in our permanent condition of indebtedness, so long do we stay poor and powerless. The IMF, as a lender of last resort, has a simple mandate. Its job is to restore our countries to credit worthiness whilst ensuring that our fundamental place in the imperialist division of labor stays. In the end, the IMF will rearrange our chains so that these don't strangle us. Our assigned rules under the empire must stay. After all, there's no value in a dead slave.
Thank you very much,
and
Senna.
I pray you're as brave as protocol.
Thank you very much, Senna. First of all, I'd like to thank, all the leaders of the Rise Ghana demonstration, including Bernard Mona, for standing strong. After I heard that there were issues with the demonstrators and the police, I wasn't sure how day 2 was going to turn up, but it was even better than day 1. Now, we've seen lots of demonstrations in Ghana, and this is not the first. This is one of many demonstrations that we've seen. But I think that this is also one of the significant ones because you realize that demonstrators were ready to hold a 24-hour demonstration non-stop. It means to say that a lot of demonstrations have gone on over the years, but it looks like they are at their peak, or demonstrators or citizens, concerned citizens, are at their peak. And it tells a lot about what is going on. And of course, indeed, just after the demonstration, we are on our way to IMF. And that tells it all. Now, you'd wonder, this is nothing special. So what went on? I was out of town, but I sat behind my phone, and then I was looking through what, particular groups of demonstrators were doing. One of the significant groups were drivers, the Drivers Association. And look, their comparison or their woes were all about comparing fuel prices in Ghana to that of our neighboring countries like Burkina Faso, like Ivory Coast, like Togo, like Nigeria. and you know others like Niger, including Sierra Leone and all, they were comparing. Then they'll go ahead and mention the fact that there are some countries that have oil and are drilling oil compared to countries that don't have. Now, every one of these countries that were mentioned have a lower price when you convert their currency into cedi, have a lower price than that of Ghana. And that is the problem. Drivers are suffering. When Uncle Kwesi was speaking, he mentioned it again, that the dollar keeps running as though we've powered it with some sort of engine. Every day, fuel price have been increased. Sometimes in a month, 3 times. It has happened in this Akufo-Addo government. And it's just so bad. You realize how NAPCO staff are not being paid. The public sector workers are just not being paid. There are several things I can point on. It's so much that it jumps you up when you want to talk about it. Because everything is at a standstill. And so the normal Ghanaian thought that let's take up the mantle, let us start a journey towards the Flagstaff House, and then, you know, and work around that. But then they wanted to speak in a different voice and see that if it will probably create a different situation. That is why they wanted to do more than they usually do, not just a one-day demonstration. And obviously the police were prepared. And I'd like to say that the IGP, Dr. Dampare, came into office, and then we thought we had seen a new wave of leadership, only for us to realize that it's a social media kind of leadership. They are so based on social media and trying to paint everything because they know that a lot of people are on social media, a very large percentage of people, just like Bernard Mona was saying. How is it possible that in the middle of the confrontation between the demonstrators and the police, you are able to release a statement that the demonstrators are attacking the police, when we had videos of policemen slapping demonstrators right in front of cameras, throwing stones at them? There was no report whatsoever from the police talking about the number of people that were injured from the demonstrators. We had pictures of some of the police heads going to visit people in hospitals, policemen in hospitals, and the policemen were fully clothed, including their shoes. Obviously a staged act. Who is being admitted second day after admission? Not as though it was immediate. Even when it's immediate, at least your shoes are taken off. And these pictures were circulating. And before you realize, we the victims who want our voice to be heard have now become the attackers, and the police have become the victims. It is only in this current government and in this current leadership of Dampare that you will see that demonstration is turned against the demonstrators. So at the end of the day, we are fighting, it looks like we are fighting a lost cause. But I hope that no one is discouraged. I hope that we continue pressing on for our voices to be heard. And I hope that eventually, some way, somehow, today I don't see the end to this, but I know that some way, somehow, we should be able to come around and then find a better future for ourselves. Thank you, Senna.
Thank you. Mr. Pat, before I go to him, let me just read a message from Kojo Chumbuafo, who says, Senna, good morning. A few years ago, I, along with others, warned Ghanaians about voting for a man who had sold all his family heirlooms to finance ostensibly his last attempt to become president by all means. I, along with others, warned Ghanaians against voting for a man whose primary campaign message was an appeal to the primordial instincts of the biggest tribe in our country. We warned against the appeal to ethnography, and that was the hallmark of the MPP campaign in the 2016 election. Granted, we in government then didn't help with the way we managed our messaging at the time. But most of all, I told Ghanaians that I knew where they would leave us because they were my family members. I hate to tell Ghanaians I told you so, but then again I did. Now, can I have my stone, please? He's asking for a special stone from Jifa. I don't know what it is between the two of them.
Tell us about Bridget.
Well, I think all the time, and I will dwell on a few things, just a few things. You know, the right to demonstrate is a constitutional right. And the right to demonstrate is unfettered. The fetters to the right to demonstrate in the Constitution were actually introduced by the National Democratic Congress. If you go to the Constitution, I think Article 29, it simply says that every Ghanaian has a right to demonstrate. Finish. It is the National Democratic Congress which actually passed the public order law and introduced so many fetters to the right to demonstrate. Now, some of these fetters undermine the right of free expression. You see, if you take the public order law, it requires you to notify the police of an intended demonstration 5 days before time. Are we saying that spontaneous demonstrations are banned in this country? The effect of that is to say that spontaneous demonstrations are completely banned. And I think it's important that we look at the public order law again, because there may be circumstances under which people would spontaneously want to demonstrate. And that right, which is a constitutional right, I think needs to be granted. That's one area that I think we should look at. Now again, the penchant of the police to go to the High Court ex parte to restrain demonstrators, I think, is also, an affront to the constitutional provision. And that we should begin to look at that also very seriously. And then thirdly, there's a High Court decision which says that every demonstration is potentially violent, and that every demonstration, every group which wants to demonstrate needs a police permit. I think this is a direct affront to the constitutional provision. And somehow, some people, somebody, ought to find ways of setting it aside in order for people to enjoy their right of free expression. Okay. The other thing that I'm exceedingly, worried about, is this attitude, and I think it came out from Jipa's presentation, of trying to do something which has not been done before. I think it's madness. We demonstrate in order to provide the opportunity for people to freely express themselves and to let the authorities know what they like and what they don't like. Finish. It ought not to be about feeding personal egos and so on. If you start off saying that I want to do something that nobody has done before, my goodness, what are you trying to do? If you start off and your objective is to do something that nobody has done before, ab initio, there's a problem. The cardinal thing, the main thing, is to protest, is to freely express yourself, is to call attention to the inadequacies of government. You understand? Or is to approve what government is doing, whatever. It's not about, and I feel very worried about that stance. You understand? Now, in the course of the week, I made a point which for me, it's key. And Bernard is here. I've been in demonstrations with Bernard before and so on. Anytime, anybody, any organization calls people onto the streets, the caller has a responsibility for the life and health of those who call onto the streets. This is something that we used to spend days, sometimes weeks, thinking through. You don't just call people onto the streets and leave them to their fate. You ought to have a plan for ensuring that limbs are not lost, that lives are not lost, and so on. And that ought to be key, you understand. As for this demonstration, the demonstration that took place a few days ago and so on, why? It is their right to demonstrate. Nobody can take that right away from them. And the issues that they demonstrated about are germane issues. Who doesn't know that this country is suffering serious hardship? Who doesn't know about the recklessness, of the authorities and so on? So those are germane issues, and nobody can take that away from them. I mean, they demonstrated, they had a right to demonstrate, the issues which were raised were appropriate and correct. What I spoke on earlier about, and maybe I think I want to come back to it again. I mean, what in hell will make somebody who wants to organize a demonstration, write a letter to the police that we will carry guns, and that in addition to carrying guns, we will occupy Broadcasting House for 3 days and be broadcasting to the nation for 3 days. What madness is that? I've said so.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, that's to conclude our show for today. But before we go, just 2 messages. This is Charles Cardinal Pokwasu says, I feel President Mahama is too honest to my liking, given how Nana-Addo and Bawumia and their lives misbehaved during his presidency. But here is a man who has not looked back and offering solutions and help to the super incompetent managers of our country. I can only say that God bless him. That's Cardinal Pokwase. There's also this one that is okay. This one has no name. It says Bawumia should be seen as an ambassador of economic failure in the country. In opposition, he was called the economic messiah to save Ghana, like the Titanic ship sinking in the ocean. Now in power, he's confused. He's a confused demon. That came from Michael. Thank you very much for making time to join us on the show today. But before we go, let me extend my condolences of the team, myself, and everybody that works with Alhaji and Alhaji to Ambassador Sampiale. Ambassador Sampiale has lost his wife. They've set a date for the burial. We'll be buried on the 6th of August at Royal, let me get this right, Royal Summerland Beach Resort, Edina Ampenyin near Ayensudo. I'm not so sure I know the place, but the burial service will be there. Okay. Mina will be there. So 6th August 2022. Our condolences to him and the family on the loss of his wife. Well, thank you for making time. Thank you to our affiliate stations across the country. And a big thank you to my panel for today, Mr. Kwesi Prajinia, who is General Secretary of Socialist Movement of Ghana, Jifa Tegan, who joins us today. Beatrice has a message for you. But let me say a big thank you to Idris Sali for protocol, a member of the MPP's communication team. Thank you very much for joining us. And then to Comrade Bernard.
No, I think that we should appreciate that. I mean, today is not a day that somebody like him should be so happy about being on radio defending something. Yes. You understand? And he has shown remarkable courage, which I really admire.
Thank you.
Just because he's an
once again. Thank you to Comrade Bernard Warner, who is a leading member
He's from the PNC and lost
to Ghana. Like I said, Jifa, this is Beatrice. Beatrice to you. Beatrice says, tell Jifa she's fantastic. She just made my day. Great woman, and she should be appearing often. That's coming from Beatrice. Yes, Beatrice Hanan. Well, thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Have a fruitful week. We are back same time next week with another edition of the Mother of All Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, live on Pan-African TV and on Radio Gold.
Into the land of freedom, he's the Redeemer, and he has led